Hello and welcome to this meeting of the Council of the Town of Oakville. Madam Clerk, do we have any regrets?
We have regrets from Councillor Shi.
Thank you. Council, I invite you and the public to rise and join in O Canada. Please be seated. In 1820, Indigenous people here began welcoming settlers from all over the empire. Soon they were helping slaves escaping from the U.S. to settle here too. And not just slaves, but free blacks who fled the United States because of the danger of being captured by mercenaries and sold into slavery. Today, our Indigenous founding partners are still here enjoying this land with us. They fish and camp under their treaty rights, and Indigenous people in their thousands also live with us as neighbors and as friends. Our Indigenous white and black settlers created a community with an attractive degree of harmony and prosperity. In 1857, Ontario gave official recognition of Oakville as a town, 167 years ago today. At Town Hall, all of these years later, we fly the flag of the Mississaugas of the Credit beside the flags of Oakville, Ontario, and Canada. We fly these flags together to acknowledge our origins. People from all over the world are attracted to the livability we have created and continue to build. We offer newcomers a warm spirit of welcome. We offer everyone our founding story so everyone knows what we are part of. We feel sorrow and distress for acts of racism and intolerance suffered across Canada and here at home. We want our future to be equitable and inclusive for everyone. The path of truth and reconciliation can unite us all. Please keep well, stay safe, and let us on council know of any chance to be helpful to you and yours. Please let us know anytime you can help increase Oakville's harmony, prosperity, and livability. Council, are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? Madam Clerk, I see none. Council, would two of you oblige us with a motion and a second to confirm the minutes of the previous council meetings or else to offer corrections? Councillor Duddick?
Thank you. Your worship, your camera's not on, just so in case you were wondering. There you are. Okay.
For some reason, it took 3 clicks. Thank you. Councillor Duddick, in return for your favor, can I have you as the mover of the confirmation of the thank you? I need a seconder. And that'll be Councillor Longo. Thank you. Any objection? There being none, the minutes are adopted. The standing committee report for the minutes of the Committee of the Whole workshop from May 13th are, I'll just check to make sure. That was, and all the other reports, is that included in your motion, Councillor Duddick? The 6.1 and 7, or 6.1, I mean? Thank you. So we'll move to resolving into Committee of the Whole. We need a mover and seconder to resolve into Committee of the Whole. Councillor McNeese and Councillor Grant, thank you. Any objection? That carries, and we are resolved into the relaxed rules of the Committee of the Whole. We have consent items 8.1, 0.2, 3, 4, and 5. I'm advised that we need to pull item 8.2, the corporate policy update, and the chair recognizes Councillor Hazletthiel.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Burton. I'd like to refer this back to staff. There's a section that talks about the use of corporate identifiers and resources, and in that section, it states that registered candidates and registered third parties may not use photographs, videos, electronic images, or graphics produced by the town or its affiliates. I'd like to ask the staff to go back and have a discussion with the town lawyers. A decision was made previously that we should be allowed to use town-produced YouTube videos of council and committee meetings in our campaigns. And so I'd ask that it be referred back to be adjusted so that that privilege is given both to delegates who take their time to come and participate as well as to councillors.
Thank you, Councillor. Is there an objection to that motion to refer? Madam Clerk, there being no objection, that motion carries. I'm also advised that on 8.4, Councillor Elgar, you'd like to make a comment.
Yes, thank you. Through Mayor Burton. Yes, I appreciate the report coming forward regarding the development charges, but there is one thing which our CAO has been able to do very succinctly in the last few months, is to highlight to all members of council exactly how much we are losing as a result of Bill 23, Bill 08, 108, and the parkland dedication. And at the end of the year, the numbers was 20 million at the end of 2023, $20,050,833. And every month since then, our CAO is giving us updates, and we're sitting at the end of March at $27,916,000. And I wonder whether somehow we can get that information to the Premier's office, or at least to municipal affairs, instead of we'll have it available upon request. Can we make that, can we change things a little bit and have it that we send that to them so they're made aware of how much we are losing based on their decisions?
Through you, Mayor Burton, certainly we can be in touch with MMAH to find out where we can send it and how it would be the most helpful to them. So we'll follow up with MMAH.
I appreciate that, because that is one of the most succinct little paragraphs you put in your newsletter to us every month. It really is helpful information, and the public should know about it every month also. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Elgar. I volunteer to write to the Premier. Beautiful. Would you be so kind, Councillor Elgar, as to move the balance of the consent items? Thank you. Any objection? There being none, that carries.
Mayor Burton, if I could get clarification on 8.2, was it divided into referring the whole item back to staff, or just number 1 and approving the other 2 sections?
We're happy to wait for 2 and 3 until we get number 1
Just
back.
bring everything back.
Yeah. Let's keep it simple. So that brings us to discussion items. So 10.1 is the noise bylaw review and a proposed noise bylaw. And we have a presentation available from Craig Williams. And as I understand it, we have a registered delegation as well. Council, do you want Mr. Williams to provide his, thank you. Councillor Adams does want it. And I do think it's beneficial to the public who may not have had the chance to read the report like you did. Mr. Williams? We're looking forward to your presentation.
Thank you, Mayor Burton, members of council, and good evening. Before you this evening is a draft of the proposed noise bylaw. Staff have prepared a brief presentation that will cover some of the changes that have been made as a result of the last round of public consultation. Next slide, please. At its planning and development meeting on December 4th of 2023, council instructed staff to engage in further public consultation to seek input on the draft noise bylaw and report back with a final version. Staff conducted its initial public consultation in April of 2022, which helped shape the direction of the noise bylaw. In February of 2024, the draft noise bylaw was made available for review and was the subject of a second round of consultation, which resulted in several amendments being made to the bylaw. Next slide, please. A brief overview of the results demonstrates that the public interest in this topic remains strong, but there was a drop in participation to 847 responses. The initial questionnaire conducted in 2022 elicited 1,472 responses. Included in the most recent questionnaire were 400 individual written comments. Common concerns included noise from construction, motor vehicles and motorcycles, fireworks, and domestic garden tools. Next slide, please. There were many great ideas that were offered within the 400+ written responses that staff reviewed. Many of these responses included very detailed information, such as start and stop times for a variety of noise sources. Many of the opinions offered were competing with one another. For example, some wanted music be permitted later in the evening, some wanted it to finish earlier, and some went so far as to detail specifically that they wanted lawnmowers not to be permitted during the dinner hour of 6 to 7 p.m. so that they can enjoy a quiet dinner. While all of these have merit, they may prove challenging to implement. As indicated in this slide, a bylaw that is excessively detailed and complicated, containing numerous specific provisions and stipulations, will only frustrate and challenge the average resident to understand. Next slide, please. Initially, there were three main principles that anchored the review and update of the bylaw. They were noise reduction, fiscal responsibility, and customer focus. Under the noise reduction caveat, staff have proposed a reduction to the allowable hours for non-permitted residential construction. This means minor construction for non-permitted projects at a home without any need for a contractor or a permit, from 9 p.m., which is current, back to 7 p.m., which will now align with all other construction noise timelines. Permitted music levels are also reduced by 5 decibels down to 50 decibels from the current 55, which is the same as the general daytime quantifiable limits for all other noise sources that are subject to a noise limit. Interior noise levels for residents living with a common party wall, such as those in condominiums, apartments, and row houses, will enjoy a much lower daytime threshold for allowable noise from sources such as stereos or TVs. Under fiscal responsibility, staff were able to significantly reduce the investigative time required for measuring steady state sounds such as those from air conditioner units and pool pumps. Staff also ensured that what is being proposed in the bylaw can be enforced with the current resources that are available. And lastly, a customer-focused approach guided staff when they looked at reducing the complexity of the bylaw by creating a distinction between noises created from industrial sources and those created by residential and commercial sources. Staff made aligning noise thresholds a priority as it promotes consistency and ease of understanding. And lastly, the noise exemption process was thoroughly reviewed and enhanced to better serve the public. Next slide, please. Based on comments received in the survey and in person at the open house, staff are recommending that the daily permitted hours for residential renovation more closely mirror those of general construction noise, primarily based on the elevated impact of tools permitted in construction, such as generators, pneumatic tools, air compressors, and vacuums. This change will enhance the consistency and understanding of the bylaw while assisting staff in enforcing the regulations. And an example of this will be staff will no longer need to determine whether or not a building permit is required before determining what the actual cutoff is, whether it's a 9 p.m. cutoff or a 7 p.m. cutoff. It's all going to be at 7 p.m. All construction noise associated with residential renovations will have the same time limit. The only difference between residential renovations and general construction is that residential renovations will still be permitted on Sundays, where general construction will not. Domestic power tools that are associated with yard maintenance, such as trimmers, leaf blowers, and lawnmowers, are not defined as construction equipment and continue to be permitted until 9 p.m. Construction equipment is defined as equipment that is used during the act of construction. The rationale behind keeping the use of garden equipment to 9 p.m. and reducing residential renovation to 7 p.m. is found in the urgency of the tasks. Construction projects that are initiated by a homeowner, such as building a deck or a small shed, are discretionary in nature and the completion of the project is not subject to a defined timeline. Lawn care and maintenance, such as keeping one's lawn under 8 inches in length, is a requirement under the Town of Oakville's lot maintenance bylaw. Major construction projects are impacted by many factors with speed to completion being directly correlated with profits. Public complaints regarding construction led to a review of the fines and determined that there was a need for increased deterrence with fines more reflective of the value of the projects. Next slide, please. Domestic power tools, such as leaf blowers, are a broad category that are defined within the Provincial Noise Guidelines, MPC 300. The guideline informs us that these devices are not considered a stationary source of sound and are normally addressed in a qualitative manner. Staff are not recommending any changes to this category. Absent of any recognized decibel limit or testing methodology, the use of time restrictions is still the most recognized and accepted method of controlling noise from these devices. Over 75% of the respondents of the most recent questionnaire favor the current time limit approach to controlling noise from domestic power tools. It is my understanding that staff from the town's Strategic Policy and Communications Department will be addressing small engine gas-powered devices tonight in item 10.2. Next slide, please. Motor vehicle noise results generally from on-road activity, which is governed by the Highway Traffic Act. Municipal enforcement staff do not have the authority to stop vehicles. The recognized sound testing procedures for automobiles are limited, and many require a closed circuit with a pass-by test using several noise meters, such as those employed by the Canadian federal regulators. The Society of Automotive Engineers has developed SAE J2825, which contains both testing methodology and noise limits for motorcycles only. The town currently enforces these limits with the assistance of Halton Regional Police. Staff have included a resolution for council consideration to request the province establish effective enforcement tools with the requisite funding for police services in Ontario to limit noise associated with loud performance and altered exhausts installed on motor vehicles. Next slide, please. Staff's recommendation is that bylaw 2024-079, a bylaw to prohibit and regulate noise within the town of Oakville, and to repeal bylaw 2008-098 as amended, attached as Appendix A to the report from the Municipal Enforcement Services dated May 14th, 2024, be passed. Next slide. Further, that council requests the government of Ontario make our neighborhoods quieter by establishing effective enforcement tools with requisite funding for police services to limit noise associated with loud performance and altered exhausts installed on motor vehicles by establishing regulations, setting limits on permitted decibel limits for motor vehicles, and providing the authority to enforce the Highway Traffic Act using automated camera-based sound level meters. Secondly, increasing fines for violations of modified exhaust and excessive vehicle noise under the Highway Traffic Act, and that a violation results in demerit points. And thirdly, banning the sale of modified exhausts explicitly used to increase the sound output of a motor vehicle. Lastly, the new noise exemption permit fees listed in Appendix D to the report from Municipal Enforcement Services dated May 14th, 2024 be approved, effective on November 25th, 2024, and such fees be included in the rates and fees schedule. That concludes the staff presentation, and we're available for any questions you may have.
Thank you very much, Mr. Williams. You have a few, at least 5, and it may grow. Councillor Chisholm is first. Councillor Chisholm.
Thank you. Yeah, you can hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you very much. A couple of questions with respect to the music from 55 to 50 decibels. How do we have the equipment or the technology to set these measurements out when there's a complaint? And how many would we need, knowing we do get a lot of noise complaints with music? How do we resource that with human resources and also with the technology? Have we considered the cost in doing that?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, we already currently enforce noise limits on music. It's 55 currently, and we're suggesting we drop it down to 50. But when we have a complaint, we have the meters available, we have the staff trained up, and we're able to handle the volume of complaints that we currently have with regards to music, TV, stereo played.
So when an officer arrives at a location or an address and there's no music going on, what happens then?
So typically in these investigations, it's you're working as a mediator between both parties. Someone wants to be able to play their music, and someone doesn't like how loud the music's being played. And so typically, there is a collaborative effort between neighbors where they'll turn their music on. We'll do without prejudice reading of it to say, okay, that is at 55 decibel. You can't go any louder than that, or you would be in violation. I mean, typically, most residents want to comply with the bylaw, but they don't know what the limit is. So in a lot of cases, all we do is go out, take the reading, establish a limit, and then show both residents that this is the allowable limit and this is where you need to reside with regards to the volume of your music. We rarely lay a charge on that. It's typically the participation of both parties, and we find a resolution that's acceptable to both. That is generally what we use the noise meter for in those instances. You're right. If we had to play a cat and mouse game where we had to go out and find someone and try to catch them, it's very difficult, which is why we have the threshold of clearly audible after 7 p.m. So we're not running around in the middle of the night. All we have to do is establish that it was on during a period and somebody could clearly hear it, and it's an easier charge delay than having to set up a noise meter and take a reading.
Okay, thank you. My second question is with respect to your comments related to the provincial government, the Highway Traffic Act with the police, assuming they do, I guess, to some degree with the noise of high exhaust vehicles and how we deal with that. And what I hear from the police, they can't do it because they don't have the technology and the ability to do that. Now, with the idea of making this an issue at the province, is it on the province's agenda or template anywhere to deal with with these issues? Is that top of mind with them, or is it just going to be buried down in their agenda?
Well, through you, Mr. Mayor, I have no idea where the province's agenda on this is.
That's interesting, because reading the report, I understand it within the realm of our authority what we can do. So all we've done is done some house cleaning and fixing up the times and getting them in alignment and increasing the fees. That's all I see out of this report to my readings. However, I understand the research that's been done on this, but I think the big issue is, and I don't know, and I would probably relinquish this to council and how we deal with this with the province, because it is an issue. It might not be an issue in other municipalities, but for some reason, especially in our ward, we have a high volume of noise complaints with the excessive exhaust of cars and high performance vehicles, and the police hands are tied. They can't really do anything with that. I know they do with the motorcycles, but with the cars, it's a real issue. So thank you for the report, but we still got major concerns about the high performance vehicles and exhaust and so forth and how we deal with that. And if the council and municipality can't deal with it, the province has to. And I implore the province to move on this, because it's getting more and more of a challenge and an issue in our municipality. I'll just leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Haslett-Deal.
Thank you, through you, Mayor Burton. Thank you for the report. I just want to make sure I've got a couple things really straight. On Sundays and on statutory holidays, if I have a building permit and I am building a house or doing a major renovation, I am not allowed to work. Is that correct?
That is through you, Mr. Mayor. That is correct.
Okay, so the alignment is around 7 to 7, but we are maintaining that we're not going to have hammers and big machinery operating on Sundays and statutory holidays. Thank you for clarifying. I just wanted to be crystal clear. In terms of the noise exemption permit process, I appreciated the name change, et cetera. Will it still be a 2-week turnaround for somebody who wants to have an event and wants to survey their neighbors to get agreement that they can have an exemption?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, it's a 30-day application process with a 2-week threshold for people to be able to respond to the letter they receive. So it's 30 days because staff need time to review the application and then need time to speak to the people who have voiced concerns about the application and navigate that, potentially find a resolution amongst the applicant and the folks who are being impacted by it, and then may have to alter the application or pass it as it is or deny it. But that there is some time on both ends of that 2-week period that is required for staff to be able to manage that request. So it's a 30-day request, 30-day application minimum.
So if I apply July 1st, I better apply by July 1st if I want to do something by the civic holiday in August.
That is correct.
And are there ever exceptions made to that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, so we have an expedited version of this. It's a higher fee, given that staff may have to work overtime or whatever the situation is, that cuts it down to 3 weeks. But the minimum 2 weeks is part of our policy in terms of notification to the public. So that has to remain.
Okay, so if everybody in the neighborhood agreed and signed off, it doesn't get any faster than the 2 to 3 week period. 3 weeks is what I'm hearing.
I mean, through you, Mr. Mayor, if the staff member is available and they can accommodate a 1-day turnaround on something that has full agreement from all neighbors, then potentially it could be fast-tracked even quicker.
Okay,
But I don't want to, tell you that that's a possibility without, and put staff under that sort of, it's 30 days for a reason, because there are only 2 officers that deal with these. And so they have to have time and availability to be able to look at all these applications and respond to all the concerns that come in from the application.
I appreciate that, and as graduation season is upon us, I thought I should ask, because I'm sure if you haven't asked for their exemption permit. That's it for me. Thank you, Mayor Burton.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Elgar.
Thank you very much, through Mayor Burton. Thanks for bringing this forward. I guess a little more clarification on outdoor event permits. They've got a location where it didn't used to be a problem, but in the last couple of years, there's been a lot of events by DJs in the open air. And how long can they play music until, and what is the decibel level again? And I think a lot of the residents have been sending online requests in, but nothing seems to happen. The here afterwards has been resolved, and that's until the next one happens.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, if you can just qualify for me what time of day you're talking about, because we have noise limits up till 7 p.m. that have to be adhered to. And then after that, we have a clearly audible clause found within unreasonable noise, and that becomes a little more restrictive. So typically, if you have, whatever location has a DJ on it, if it's during the day, they either apply for a noise exemption permit and get exempted from our noise bylaw, or an officer, we've put a new provision in the bylaw that basically stipulates that if noise is being heard in the street off of a property, that is considered an offense if there's no noise exemption in place. So there's no requirement to go to an adjoining property any longer, to go to someone's backyard and take a noise reading. An officer can show up on a city street, and if they can clearly hear the music being played and there's no permit, then that is an offense to the bylaw, and they can go in and issue an order to comply immediately, lay charges, take whatever action is necessary to shut down the music. That has also been put in the bylaw, where the officers are now empowered, such as property standards, and can take immediate action to remedy whatever offense is taking place on the property.
So would that be during the afternoon also, or is that just after 7 o'clock at
No,
night?
it's any time during the day. So what we've done is we've heard the concern about having to take cumbersome noise readings of these events. And so a new provision has been put on the bylaw that stipulates that any noise that enters onto a city street, city property that can be clearly audible and is likely to disturb inhabitants. It has to be both. It can't be like quiet music. We're not gonna just go out and shut down something that's very muffled. But if it's a loud DJ type event or a band and it's disturbing people, then the officers have the right to go in and tell them to turn it off and then take action if they don't.
So would my action be to send it off to Selena? And then you would look after it?
You mean a concern?
Yes.
You could actually phone that in at any time of day to the towns, or even call the police, and they would dispatch an officer. Our mobile compliance officers can take action on that section of the bylaw. They don't have to be trained in taking noise readings. They can go out and actually just audibly hear the offense and take action at that time. So it's 24/7 coverage on that.
I appreciate what you're saying. I am going to send that clip off to a few individuals. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Adams.
I wanted to thank our staff for the review and work that they did with respect to the automobile noise issue. The emission of noise has been an ongoing problem for many, many years. It's not new by any chance, but it is one that has in recent years come to greater concern among residents. And I know that adjacent municipalities have cited the same problem, and I'm certain that the noise associated with the automobiles is also one that attracts concern about speeding as well. That the two kind of go together. When you hear the car, you think it's going fast, and they probably are. But in any case, I want to thank you for the review of that work and noting it to the province. I hope that the province takes it seriously and takes a strong action on it, because I think it would help all of us deal with this problem that's an aggravating one for so many people. And I know that we're not the only municipality citing it. The only question I have for you, is there a way of having this material provided to our adjacent municipalities so that they can back us up on this request? I'm pretty sure Mississauga has already done that, but I don't have a listing of every municipality in Ontario that probably has, but it would be great if we could get some backup from our sister cities around Ontario.
Councillor, to assist Mr. Williams and Council, I volunteered to distribute this to the Big City Mayor's Caucus and to every member of AMO.
Thank you so much, sir.
We have Councillor O'Meara.
Thank you so much. Just a quick question on how our changes are going to impact sort of our mixed use areas now. In Brawny, we're starting to have more and more residents living right above the business and retail area. We have patios, we have sort of music outside there. And there's this constant battle between, no, this is a residential area, and no, this is a retail area and a commercial space in the evening. So how are we mitigating that? How are we allowing some music on a patio into the evening, maybe at 7:38, or like what are the lines that we're drawing here with regards to mixed use areas and that we're going to start seeing more and more and more of?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, if the receptor property is residential, which I'm assuming you're talking about, then regardless if it's coming from another residential property or a commercial property, 7 p.m. is the threshold for clearly audible. So we have to take a reading of the noise or the music in this case up until 7 p.m. From 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. the officer would go out, establish that the noise, in this case the music, isn't exceeding 50 decibel outside the property, and then after 7 p.m. they would be instructed to turn it down to a point where it's not clearly audible by a point of reception on an adjoining property, in this case the residential property.
So the adjoining property is all the same property though. So commercial below, residential above. So it's the exact same property. It's not adjoining. So how are we addressing that?
Well, through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm suggesting is an adjoining property is a residential that's located above a commercial. So we would go to a plane of an open window in the residential, or a balcony, if they have a balcony, and take the reading from that.
Okay, and did we ask how people feel about that, about the business communities, about the evening, about vibrancy, which is in our strat plan, about trying to attract people to these areas and not rolling up our carpets at 5 o'clock and going to bed? I mean, it seems like we're trying to nullify our evening and commercial areas when I don't really know that that's the thing that we want necessarily. Did we get any of that information back in the survey?
Well, through you, Mr. Mayor, as I've said in my reports countless times, it's about balance. And we're trying to balance the needs of a vibrant community with the needs of everyone to be able to enjoy the peace, quiet, and repose of their property. And this is the best effort that we've been able to put forward with regards to trying to accomplish both those tasks. And if council feels that they want to address that in some way by altering this bylaw, then you're free to do so.
Well, I know that. I appreciate that. I know what we can do as a counselor here, and that's what I'm trying to just figure out what it is we've done. And I mean, we have people moving into these areas and then saying, no, I want it to be quiet, and it's chipping away at our vibrancy in our commercial area here. So anyway, I'm gonna sit on this for a minute. I appreciate the response there, and I'll see maybe if other council colleagues who have BIA areas or other things have comments on that as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Liszczyna?
Thank you very much. I'd like some clarification because back on one of the slides talking about indoor noise, there was a point made that it's going down by 10 decibels from the current 45. And then when I look at the indoor living area, it doesn't actually mention that except background sound. So I'm confused to what that reference was to.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, what we've done is quite unique. The 45 decibels was established by the engineering firm back in 2008 as a reasonable limit inside an interior living space. So they didn't do any studies when they did that. They didn't really have any guidance. They just chose that because it was the lowest level that seemed to be acceptable but to the province, which was an outdoor noise reading in the evening. So our experience is that when you're indoors, if you were to take a noise reading with nothing really going on, other just a normal living room or bedroom, you would typically see about 31 or 32 decibel. So what we're suggesting is, and this is backed up by studies done by the World Health Organization that say that a sleeping area should be below 35 decibel to be acceptable. So our experience is that most living areas are much lower than even 35. You're typically in the 31 to 32 decibel. So what we're suggesting is during the day is that the threshold is 30 or 31 or 32, whatever the ambient is in that living quarter, plus 4 decibel. That is the threshold. If we take a reading with your TV or stereo on in the next room and we're getting 5 decibel higher, then you're in contravention of our bylaw, because what we've established is that 5 decibel is what would be deemed to be clearly audible. We did studies on how loud we had to elevate noise from behind a wall and then determine we could actually hear the information in the music or the TV and be able to say that, yes, that is clearly audible. Now, that study done by staff was actually corroborated by an independent study done by our noise engineer as well, who had said that they were surprised that staff were able to come up with that conclusion because that was the same conclusion they came up with. The City of Ottawa also has used that 5 decibel.
No,
So-
and I'm fine with that, but does that need to be stated along in the bylaw with respect to what the background noise level is, that 35 rather than 45? Because if people are coming back and saying, you used to tell me that 45 was the background noise and now you've changed it to 35, there should be something in there to state that this is in the new bylaw, that's what it is. I'm just saying it seems confusing to me, but if you don't think so, I'm fine with that.
Mr. Williams?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the 45 decibel still stands as an outside reading. And if what we're trying to accomplish here is that any noise that's generated from outside must be read outside. And any noise that's generated from the inside has to be done with an inside reading. What we're trying to do is get rid of this duplicitousness of someone saying, I want an outdoor reading and then I want you to come inside my house and do an indoor reading, where you have 2 different limits. The indoor reading is only applied when you have a noise that's adjacent to a wall coming from another unit. So if a noise is being generated from outside, like a pool pump or music or what have you, that reading is done outside the building. And you have a limit of 45 decibel you have to adhere to. The inside limit is only done if there's noise transmission between two living quarters.
Alrighty, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Nanda.
I think the CEO has a comment.
Well, Madam CAO.
Mayor Burton, I was going to suggest actually in reply to that question, I'm sure we've got some correspondence that are going out to explain that the bylaw has been put in place. And so the explanation between the 35 and the 45 could be very much part of that so that people understand the changes that are being made and where those readings are being read. So we can incorporate it there, not of course in the bylaw.
Thank you. Thank you. Through you, Mayor Burton. Thank you so much for the report. I had a question on the construction noise. So construction noise or renovation is not supposed to start till 7 a.m. However, we've had residents complain that trucks come in as early as 5 o'clock in the morning to a construction site, and specifically during the colder times where they will keep their trucks on. So that noise level actually wakes up residents and is loud enough to be disruptive, and it's before 7 a.m. So we were asked by our residents, should they not be coming in right at 7 a.m.?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, the short answer is yes. We have several provisions in the noise bylaw, including delivery of goods, which wouldn't be permitted before 7 a.m. So that provision could be applied. Potentially the construction noise, if it was like a dump truck or a mixer, that was what part of that is, we consider that construction equipment. So yeah, there is provisions in there. It's just a matter of being able to have an officer attend, witness, and then lay the charge. I mean, typically in those situations, you caution the contractor for, say, we were receiving complaints, you can't have vehicles arriving before 7 a.m. It's typically the way we do it. It is in there.
Councillor, thank you. Councillor McNeese.
Thank you, through your worship, and thanks for the presentation. Just two questions. So I'm trying to understand how BIAs are dealt with. I see in the previous bylaw, 2008-098, that BIAs and a number of sort of town events like Santa Claus Parade, Remembrance Day Parade, things like that, had an exemption to applying for the exemption. And then in the new bylaw, it seems that just their fees are waived. Am I understanding that correctly, or?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that is correct. So if they will be required to receive or apply for a noise exemption permit, but there will be no fee attached to that permit.
Okay, and then is it sort of more expansive in the new one because it states nonprofits, charities, BIAs, a couple other things? Yeah, is that the idea?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes. We were trying to consolidate as much as we could because we had named every single event in the old bylaw. And if we had to add a new bylaw, a new event, then we would have had to ask for an amendment to the bylaw to include that. So we're trying to consolidate all of these events, whether they be charitable events, BIA events, nonprofit events, under this umbrella, and then, but they still need to require to apply for that noise exemption permit so that everyone has an opportunity to know what is going on. And then, but there is no fee attached to it. So
and that would be for each event, like even if it's a weekly event?
Well, through you, Mr. Mayor, if it's a weekly event, they can apply for a 6-month exemption.
6 months.
So, and that can be renewed at the end of 6 months. So if there was a situation where they had, a farmer's market every weekend or something and they needed to get an exemption, then there's a potential there that could be done with one exemption over a time period.
Okay, but so each series of events, so there'd be a lot of noise exemptions going out for an organization like a BIA or potentially a Legion or something like that. They'd have to be put in, and they'd have to do it 30 days in advance as well? Through
you, Mr. Mayor, that's correct.
Okay. think maybe some of my other councillor colleagues may have some feedback on that as well. I'm going to switch over to Councillor O'Mara's comments just on the mixed-use areas. Do we know what, say, downtown Burlington or Port Credit, these kind of vibrant mixed-use areas that have ground floor commercial with residential above, what noise, what decibel level they're allowing and until what time?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, cities like Mississauga don't have decibel readings right now. They have no thresholds. Burlington, no noise thresholds. They don't take noise readings. They're looking to adopt noise readings. Oakville is one of the most unique communities in Ontario that have a comprehensive noise bylaw that has noise levels. Our staff are trained and are able to do that. But most communities don't have the trained staff or the ability to take noise readings. They simply use clauses like likely to disturb the inhabitants.
I mean, part of my concern as Councillor Mara is we're pushing vibrancy, outdoor patios, things like that. You almost have car noise that would be louder than, you know, someone playing music to help create that vibrancy on a patio in some of these mostly business areas. Okay, I'm gonna sit on that, but I see a few other councillors may have some comments on that. Thank you.
Councillor O'Meara may even have new comments on that. Councillor Giddings is first, though.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, similar to Councillor O'Meara and Councillor McNeese's concerns, there's a concert at Town Square, and without benefit of a permit, one of the residents facing Town Square could have them shut down as a result of the music or the decibel reading.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that is correct.
And so with ongoing events, would they have to apply individually, or could they have, you know, Friday nights, Saturday nights, or do they need details of the actual event that's occurring?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the Parks Department has its own permitting system. So if we were suggesting it's on Town Square, they would be able to address that through a parks permit. We twin with Parks Department with regards to offering exemptions of the noise bylaw based on whatever the application is through the Parks Department. So I'm assuming we're talking about a parks permit of some sort?
Right, and so if they move down the street to a sidewalk or something that isn't considered under parks and open space, they would have to revert to the other commercial permit.
They would, through you, Mr. Mayor, they would have to get a noise exemption permit, yes.
All right, yeah, I guess Councillor McNeese summed it up well. We've got constant complaints over motorcycles and cars driving along Lakeshore, and yet we can't enforce that, whereas we're going to insist that the entertainers pull a permit. Not being critical, I'm just trying to figure out for myself how we can bring balance to this.
Councillor, Mr. Williams has stressed to us that the Highway Traffic Act, that, you know, it's not, we don't have the authority there.
No, I understand. I'm just trying to, in my own mind, justify how we explain this to residents that are, you know, out for an evening or whatever, that how we can allow the vibrancy for the BIAs and other districts to continue.
Well, Councillor, I'm mindful of, you know, there are establishments on Cornwall Road who would like to have music and whose neighbors would like to sleep and so on. So
and we went through that, yes.
I believe, I mentioned it because I believe you have the scars still from that.
Yeah,
as
it still
I have.
hurts.
So maybe what's required is a further study of how to deal with pick your choice, mixed use areas, or as is more likely the matter, BIAs. And if you were to choose that route, a request for report might be the appropriate instigating measure. And in the meantime, the noise bylaw could be updated for all the other benefits that it brings.
Great advice, and I look forward to further comments from Ward 1 and 2 with their BIAs. Thank you.
Well, you're about to get your wish from Ward 1. Welcome back, Councillor O'Meara. I think I have a first timer before I go to you, and under our rules, I should try to remember that. Councillor Knoll is next.
Thank you, Worship. Thank you for the report. I have a couple questions. First of all, a story. A few years ago, we had a developer in Ward 5 that I almost daily violated the noise bylaw, and it probably led to the early retirement of Jim Barry. But more importantly, it became what happened is it became a cost of doing business for that developer. It was cheaper to pay the fines than it was to delay the construction. So I noticed that there are progressive fines in this report or in this bylaw up to $1,000 for a third offense. What happens after that? Does it kick into the SPPA and go to a court? How is that managed?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So yes, they could issue a Part 3 summons and take them to court for significantly higher fines. Maximum fines can range up to $25,000.
And at what point can you do that?
You can start right from the first charge. You don't have to lay like a Part 1,
right,
or in this case an AMP. You can go right to Part 3. Depends on if there's been warnings before. There are a lot of mitigating and aggravating circumstances that the officer would consider what course is the best course of action to take.
Curious, in this particular incident, I don't know whether it's because the bylaw was weaker at that point or not, but we could never get around that. It never happened. And this developer was allowed to continue this with impunity, literally to the day the development was completed. So I'm glad to see those teeth are in there, because that's a real aggravation. You say there's no cost of application fee to charities and nonprofits that are holding events like RipFest or any of these sorts of events in the community. What about the cost of actually giving notice? Because I know that depending on where I believe there's a 250-meter notice radius, is that correct?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it's 120 meters.
120 meters. In some areas where it's dense, that can be quite a few households. In other areas, not so much. Who bears the cost of or the responsibility of distributing those notices?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the applicant.
Okay, so that would still be a cost back to the charity if that was the case?
Yes.
Okay. In terms of the enforceability of charges, have we had many tests in court with respect to these charges under our previous bylaw? And do these cases stand up in court?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, our motorcycle charges, we have not lost one.
Okay.
With regard to that. With regard to some of the other noise charges, a lot of the work that we've done on this bylaw are a result of failures in the court. We haven't had many, but there have been some which have required changes in our bylaw to ensure that those loopholes are closed. So we feel that this bylaw will be a stronger bylaw to be able to stand on its own and stand a court challenge.
Can you give some examples of how previous failures in court have informed this new bylaw?
So I don't really want to get into freedom of information with regards to applicants or individuals who were
I'm not looking
involved
for
in it.
specifics. I'm looking more of a general response.
So some of the procedures we had with regards to our old bylaw were vague in terms of what we were required to capture, how we captured it, and they could have been tested in court. There were instances where we didn't have the appropriate equipment to be able to test things like humidity, wind speed. So those things have been addressed. And we've also tightened up the language in terms of how a reading is taken. So in the past, it just said on the point of someone's property, you could take a reading. What we're saying now is that the reading is going to be specified from the middle of someone's property, 3 meters off the back wall of the building to avoid any sort of reflection. And what we've done to do that is that it avoids bias. what we found was that a resident would complain about someone's air conditioner, and if you were to think of 3 properties, the property in the middle being the complainant, complaining about one resident's air conditioner, but not the other resident's air conditioner. Same unit, same volume, but they had taken their patio and offset it to one side of their property and were complaining about the air conditioner that was closest to them. And what we're suggesting is that bias is the person who owns the air conditioner, because this person has chosen to move to the property line, where if they'd moved to the other property line, they would have been complaining about the other person with the air conditioner. We're suggesting that the reading will be taken from the center point of the property, thereby allowing a fairness to both adjoining properties, that they have the same volume levels that they're going to have to adhere to.
Okay, that's great. I just came up with a thought during your presentation. I quickly scanned through the documentation to see if it was covered, but let me take you through the scenario of somebody, for example, holding a Sweet 16 party for their daughter or their son in their backyard, and they want to have live music. How would they manage that? They would apply for an exemption as an individual?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes.
Are they exempt from the fee?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, no, they're not.
Okay, and what would that fee be for them?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I believe it's around $190.
Okay, I didn't see it in Schedule A. I just saw the construction fees in Schedule A, so I didn't see what that was. Is that, it's not in there because that was the previous exemption fee? Is that why?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, it's the current exemption fee.
Okay, so the notice requirements for a private event such as a birthday party, retirement, whatever the case is, would be the same notice radius and such?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that is correct.
Okay.
120 meters from the property.
Okay, thank you very much.
Councillor Haslett-Deal, I think you're for the first time. No? Oh, in that case, Councillor O'Meara, you're next, and then Councillor Haslett-Deal.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm wondering, and I don't know where it would be, but I'm wondering if staff would be amenable to changing the time from 7 p.m. till 9 p.m. in the BIA areas, so it lets sort of the dinner crowd get out of there, and then if we hear music from the street, that's fine. I'm wondering if that would be an amendment that staff would feel comfortable making.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, again, we have this scale of simplistic to complex that we try to live in. Somewhere on that curve is the most effective bylaw that we can have. As we start to tip into more complex rules, it makes it more difficult for residents to understand what is legal and what isn't. Makes it more difficult for the officers to apply that. They're going to have to know what the limits of every BIA is to know whether or not this noise is in a BIA or not in a BIA. I'm not exactly sure. There aren't lines painted on the road that says your BIA ends here. So it would be difficult, not impossible, but certainly more difficult to be able to enforce a bylaw like that as we get into more nuanced types of regulation.
Okay, I mean, I get that. It doesn't seem like we're taking any consideration into the businesses, though. It's the residents, and these businesses are going to have to really understand this, and they're really going to have to change their audio. They're going to have to do a lot of work here, and I don't think it's fair, and I'm not sure if they've been consulted as well. And I don't really think we have time for a request for a report and miss a year, have this come back next year. So if that's the way to go, I'll happy to bring back a request for a report, but I love everything else, but I can't support this if we're not going to look after our businesses and our areas there, and we're going to stifle them. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Haslett-Deal.
Thank you, through you, Mayor Burton. So in regards to the BIAs, were they consulted about the change to go to 7 to 7 directly?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, the BIAs were sent information with regards to this process. The draft bylaw was issued at the time for them to review, and I don't recall receiving any comments or emails from any of the BIAs outlining their concern with regard to this.
Okay, well, as a member of the Downtown BIA Board, I probably would have appreciated getting copied on that as well, but that may be an internal BIA need. I do concur with Councillor O'Meara and Councillor McNeice. It is not that complicated to figure out which BIA you're in. And it is not that complicated to know that they run events just about every weekend. And if you're downtown, we run 220 events last year. So that's a lot of paperwork for you when we know that they're going to need an exemption till at least 9 or 10 at night, on Friday, Saturday, typically on Sunday we call it a break at 6 o'clock. But it seems to me we're asking for paperwork, but we're going to give them a pass on the fee, which all the BIAs would appreciate. I'm concerned that they do need to be consulted more directly. I apologize if they did not respond to you, but the enjoyment and the benefit to the businesses between 7 and 9 p.m. is real. People come out of the restaurants, they go over and enjoy the music at the square. We're going to end up with events at Centennial. We're going to this is on the ground reality of what people experience. And for as much as I love all the residents and their patience in and around our BIAs, there is a balance to be struck, and it can't be 7 p.m. Because it will be clearly audible. It will be. And so now you're asking them to do paperwork for all of those events. I'd suggest that a request for a report delays to, if that's going to get us a timely return of a discussion, I would support that, but I'm with Councillor O'Meara. I can't support our BIAs not having an opportunity to at least operate till 9 o'clock at night.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, if I could assist, perhaps it would be better that in addition to the recommendations in the report, that you direct staff to work with the BIAs for a specific solution to the issues that you're raising right now. We have the challenge that we have is the restaurants that are on the shoulders. So we need to do a bit more thinking. But if you direct us now at this point to come back with further information, then that saves the request for a report.
That sounds like a great suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Chisholm, Councillor Grant, and Councillor Knoll.
Thank you, Worship. I'm echo Councillor Hester-Teal's comments and Sean O'Meara's with the tying all the BIAs in together. There might be some consideration of in that exemption, but might be site specific or specific areas in the BIAs that have a little bit more latitude. Because we create a lot of events and a lot of revenue for the our street and so forth, and it continues on. We draw a lot of people in tourism and so forth. So yeah, the 7 p.m. just doesn't cut it. We got to be looking at 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock at night for an exemption for our BIA. So I agree with the comments made from staff that if we can put that in and add that in some kind of narrative and what that would be great. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Chisholm. I've been to a Kerfest or two where 9 o'clock would be too early to shut down. So there's lots here to think about. Councillor Grant.
Thank you, and I completely sympathize with the BIAs. I understand that. However, I also want to point out that not everybody has a BIA, but most of us do have mixed use, or there are mixed use developments coming forward. So as we're looking at this, we need to look at it more as a mixed use bylaw than just the BIA exemption. We need to, if we can tie it somehow to zoning, I'm not sure, but we need to be able to ensure that the people who are operating without a BIA in north of the QEW have an opportunity to still run their business and be successful, even though they are the main floor of a large apartment building or next door to a development.
Thank you, Councillor Grant. Perhaps the fourth item to be added here could be, and that staff consult with the BIAs and with planning to develop appropriate policies for mixed-use areas. Mr. Commissioner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think that summarizes a suggestion very well. We're happy to take that back and work on some revisions that would accommodate those. I would just suggest that there's actually nothing changing at this moment. So, but you've highlighted a concern that we can take back and address. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Council, may we call the Councillor Hazlet-Thiel?
I just want to clarify from a procedural perspective. So it won't be a reconsideration if it passes tonight. It will, because we've sent you back to do some discussion. So if in fact we go to change what you've written as a result of discussions with, owners of mixed-use buildings, et cetera, and the BIA, that we won't be in a situation where it's a reconsideration of a vote. I just want to clarify. You're the king of procedure. I want to make sure we get it right.
My recommendation is that we omit to pass recommendation number 1. We pass number 2. We pass number 3. And we pass this new referral to staff for work on the BIAs and the mixed-use areas. So then you have belt and suspenders protection from reconsideration. Although I would have thought reconsideration wouldn't have been a problem because I think we're all seized with the importance of this. Mixed-use areas being not restricted just to the areas that have BIAs. Mr. Commissioner, do you want to say something else?
Not at this point. I think that works out well. The intention was not the bylaw wouldn't come into force in November, so that would give us extra runway to come back and report. Thank you.
Perfect. Now, Council, with your permission, I'd like to call the registered delegation. Madam Clerk.
Pierre Silvio.
Welcome, Mr. Sauvageau. We look forward to your contribution.
Yes, good evening. Just want to support and thank the councillors, the mayor, and staff for this very informative session. I don't have any further questions in this matter at this moment. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Council, who wants to give us the motion? Councillor Lischina has offered. So just to repeat so that everybody's clear, we're going to ignore section 1 of the recommendation, and we're going to adopt the section called number 2, which is to request the Government of Ontario to assist us in helping make our neighborhoods quieter by going after the automobile source of offensive noise, and that and part number 3, which is the new fees, and a new part 4, which is to refer which is to direct staff to consult with the BIAs and the planning department for appropriate policies for mixed-use areas and BIAs. Everybody good with that? Councillor McNeese.
Thank you. Through your worship, I just want to make sure I understand this correctly. So part 3 with a new fee schedule, in the future bylaw, there was the exemption for nonprofits and charities, BIAs. So would that get reflected in what we're voting on here?
So those exemptions would be passed if you vote for this.
Okay.
I gather you want those.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, then you're about to be happy. Unless, oh, wait. Councillor Adams, do you want to go before the CAO or after?
I'll wait for the CAO and then ask.
Madam CAO, edify us.
Mayor, members of council, I suggest you don't approve the fees. The fees are attached to the last recommendation, recommendation number 3. So I understand the fees are attached to the new bylaw, and if you're not doing the new bylaw, then you can hold off on the fees until we bring back the bylaw.
Councillor Lischina, you're happy with deleting that part? So we're all still happy on that. Councillor Hazlet-Thiel.
Can we put a timeline on this? Because I don't want Mr. Williams to feel like, we know how hard you worked on this. And we know you want something passed, but we do need this consultation. So what would be the timeline to, that it would be returned by.
Well, Counselor, are you sure that you want to set a time limit, given that we're asking, I mean, the internal stuff with the planning department could be fairly expeditious, I'm sure. But consulting with the BIAs, wouldn't you need a couple of months for that at least?
I'm not suggesting that I don't need a couple of months. I always believe when we have time-defined objectives, it's helpful.
Well, what would you like?
Well, our new director is standing there. Does 2 months work, Selena?
Thank you. Through you, Your Worship, and thank you, Councillor Haslett-Thiel. Yeah, absolutely. We want to make sure that the consultation is thorough with the BIAs and considering all of the mixed-use impact as well. We were planning on bringing the bylaw forward with an effective date of November. So if we can bring something back to you before that date, I think we would still be on target for the effective date to be in November. So say if we come back by October, September, October, that should give us enough time to do proper consultation.
All right. Okay, I think there's happiness over here. Councillor Adams.
I just wanted to ask a question about the term that we used in the revised wording is mixed-use areas, I think is how you termed it. And the one wrinkle that brings to mind is the issue of the commercial areas, for which we've got plenty. And in some cases, the commercial areas in North Oakville and the rest of town, for that matter, act like the business BIA areas of wards 1, 2, and 3, and I don't want to open up a giant Pandora's box of reviewing where things should or shouldn't happen, but there are definitely patio areas that would fall in a commercially designated part of Oakville, for which we may or may not want to consider extending times, but there may be special events that might occur on a commercial area for which we might want to provide some kind of support. And so I wonder if that threading of a needle could be considered in planning's
Well,
thought when
I'm
they come
mindful
back.
of a pub in your ward where it's very close to homes and in a shopping center.
Yeah.
And I can think of one or two in Ward, actually, I can think of them all over town now that I stop.
That's why I said they're everywhere.
So, but you need to add to this and commercial areas to get what you want.
Yes, that's, I think, what I was trying to get to.
But, you know, if the consultation is to go ask pubs in commercial plazas what they want, and they all say, we want music until 10 o'clock, are you at peace with doing that?
I think if we're asking pubs that are in mixed-use areas, it's the same as asking pubs that are in commercial plazas.
I just hope that we're, you know, anyway, the solution is to add those
Yeah,
words.
I think the solution is to ask, and if the answer is, we're not comfortable having pubs open until, with music until 1 o'clock in the morning or something on a regular basis, because it's problematic for neighbors, then we need to consider that. But on the other hand, if a commercial plaza is going to have a really great event for the community, and they're hosting it on their plaza, that's a different matter. And I'd like to ask them about that. So.
I'm your servant in this matter. I'm just trying to give you the language to get what you want.
And
thought
I
I'd
appreciate
check,
that. Thank you.
Do you really want that? But you've insisted, so I believe you. Councillor Elgar?
Thank you. Through Burton, I'm just afraid we may be opening up something that we don't realize what we're actually doing here, especially where there are houses nearby, where residents would like to put their kids to bed at a half-decent time.
Well, that's
that
your
seems-
BIA and your patio and your living above the pub thing that started this.
Yes, but now we're getting into where there may be a pub in an area, and right around it are houses, and we could be opening up something which what Craig Williams didn't want to open.
We could be
I can understand why now.
We could be expanding the number of complaints about noise from
Yes,
pubs.
we might be having to increase our bylaw department exponentially.
Well, you'll have to keep that in mind when the bylaw comes back.
You got it.
and you decide whether you're going to pass it or not.
For sure, because all of a sudden, there's a lot more things getting added in. Thanks.
All right. Councillor Chisholm.
And the beat goes on. Okay, let's look at reality right now. What is happening, and I guess through staff, do we have a lot of issues with patios, with music downtown, in any of those areas of commercial? Are we having challenges? Have we had complaints at this stage?
Through you, Your Worship, there are a number of complaints that we've received in those commercial areas where nearby residential has been impacted. Would I say they're excessive? No. They are relatively limited, but they certainly are there. There's certain areas in particular that are more impacted than others. I would also note that the reg that we're looking at is really only a 5 dB decrease. So I think it was 55 dB before, we're looking at 50 dB now as far as that impact on residential. There is and has been the ability for any business or charitable organization or event to have that or request that noise exemption at any point if they've ever had an event that they felt that they were going to exceed the noise bylaw. Oftentimes, a lot of the events are held with reasonable noise and noise impacts, and the exemption isn't required, and we'd never receive a complaint. So it's one of those things where, like Mr. Williams has said, we really are looking to strike that balance of what's reasonable in commercial areas so they can conduct their business and customers can enjoy that music on the patio without being to the point where it's excessive and negatively impacting those neighbors who are right next door, who love to be part of that vibrant community, but also want their children to be able to sleep at 9 o'clock at night. So it's really striking that balance. So we're happy to take any direction you have. Certainly, I share your concern with sort of opening up Pandora's box and saying, you know, this pub's okay, but this one's not. It becomes very difficult to enforce when you start getting that granular as far as where you can be and where you can't, which is why we sort of suggested that overall noise limit with the possibility of that noise exemption for those events that really should happen as part of those vibrant communities. But I certainly look to council for your direction.
Thank you.
Yeah, I turned it off so I wouldn't say anything. All right. What do you want to do, Council? We have a motion by Councillor Chinna that Council make the request indicated of the Government of Ontario about automotive noise, and that staff be directed to consider and bring back to Council. I'm going to rewrite it as I read it. That staff consider and bring back to Council options for commercial areas, BIAs, and mixed-use areas. Are we happy with that? Any objection? There being none, that's carried, and we can move on to 10.2, the use of gas-powered equipment. Suraj Maan is here.
Mr. Mayor, would you mind if we were able to move 10.5, which is OEC, as we have a large delegation here of senior leadership and the board, if they could present next? Would council have an issue with that?
I don't mind. Does council mind? Well, let's move, if we're going to do that, you have essentially the same type of business. for the Municipal Development Corporation and the Enterprise Corporation. We'll turn now to 10.5. Thank you, Siraj, for being patient. And we'll recognize Mr. Rob Lister, the President and CEO of Oakville Enterprises Corporation, regarding the annual business and quarterly update. Mr. Lister, welcome. We look forward to your presentation.
Thank you. Great. Well, good evening, Mayor Burton, members of council. Very happy to be here this evening to provide our quarterly update, but also our annual general meeting. So tonight I have strong representation from OEC, as you can see. We have Scott Moody, who is our EVP and Chief Energy Transformation Officer. We have Laura Wilson, our Chief Financial Officer. Sean McCoggan, EVP and Chief Strategy and Growth Officer. Jeff Mocha, Chief Engineering and Innovation Officer. Annie Petrin, Director of Strategic Communications and Brand Experience. And Bethany St. Pierre, our Director of Administrative Services and Corporate Secretary. We also have Mr. David Brennan, who's the Chair of OEC. And we also have with us a member of our board is Ian Cockwell joining us. So Chair David Brennan will present proposed directors for OEC and Oakville Hydro boards, and then I will provide some highlights of 2023. Scott Moody will come forward and speak a little bit about Oakville Hydro, and then Laura Wilson will come forward to talk about our financial highlights for 2023. So at this point, I'd ask Mr. Brennan to come up and address council. Thank you.
Through you, Mayor Burton. Good evening. I've got basically two high-level comments for you and then questions, if any, from you. The first is high level is on structure. If we could have the...
I was supposed to speak to the agenda.
Yeah. There. So first on structure, what you have, if you've taken a look at this, you basically have two corporations up here. The one, as I'm looking at, I think we're all looking at, on the left, OEC is the parent company, which the town of Oakville used to be 100% owner of and is now 90% owner of. And on the right is Oakville Hydro, the LDC, the regulated entity, which is a wholly owned subsidiary of OEC. So OEC owns 100% of Oakville Hydro. So what we're putting every year, what we put forward and recommend to you is the directors for OEC, which is the company that you own, and we put forward, as this year, as in prior years, the recommendation for directors for your approval. Now, the directors for Oakville Hydro, those, because they are, Oakville Hydro is wholly owned by OEC, then OEC and the board of directors of OEC appoint the directors on the right side. So that's the high-level comment on structure. Then on an individual level, the second comment is on the left-hand side, you'll see there, since last year when we had the AGM, you've got 4 new faces there. Excuse me. You've got Harold Holloway, Rob Lister, and Ian Cockwell, who are already appointed to the board on a short-term basis coming through the year. This is now their first formal AGM meeting with you. The other new face is Brian Johnson. He is the Enbridge nominee. In the past, it was Michelle Herodance. She has stepped down, and Enbridge is nominating Brian Johnson for that role. On the right-hand side, the new faces there are Janet Wilkinson and Tim Smith. Again, those will be, assuming you approve the board members on the left, then those board members will be appointing the board members on the right. That's all my comments. Happy to entertain any questions. I'm even happier to sit down. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Brennan. Welcome back, Mr. Lister.
Thank you very much. So our organization has continued to do very well financially, and we performed very well in 2023. We continue to grow and expand nationally with over 2,500 employees delivering projects and services. Most of our business activity is in Ontario, with a strong presence in Alberta and British Columbia. We are slowly making inroads through some of the other provinces including some telecom projects in Eastern Canada. This slide depicts the range of energy and infrastructure services and assets we leverage to provide a solid financial foundation and platforms for growth. We are an energy and infrastructure services business. Our main lines of business are utility infrastructure construction, engineering for electricity, natural gas, and telecom, damage prevention for underground infrastructure assets through our locate companies, renewable generation, which is run-of-the-river generation, solar, and GeoExchange, which is the new district energy, asset management and location intelligence services, and electricity distribution in Oakville through Oakville Hydro. For the infrastructure services businesses, we are a business-to-business service provider, B2B. The majority of our revenues in this area come from the large utility, telecom, and municipal asset owners. Part of our success is the high level of work quality and value we provide our customers, resulting in long-term relationships. As Laura will elaborate, OEC had very strong financial performance in 2023. Our revenues almost reached $700 million, an increase of $100 million over 2022, and our profit exceeded $30 million. As I've previously reported to Council, our safety performance is industry-leading in all our businesses. We have high customer satisfaction feedback and scores. And as an indicator of new employee activity due to growth and attrition, we recruited 530 new employees last year across Canada. OEC is a member of CCAB, which is the Canadian Council for Aboriginal Relations, or Aboriginal Business. Many of our businesses are part of their PAR program. PAR is Progressive Aboriginal Relations, and it's a certification program that confirms corporate performance in Indigenous relations. CCAB is a national organization that builds bridges between Indigenous and non-Indigenous peoples, businesses, and communities. Through our Indigenous initiatives, we will nurture new business and growth opportunities. OEC's brand continues to grow favorably across Canada, advancing growth and diversification. We are very engaged in the energy and the electrification transition. Internally, we're developing low forecast scenarios, asset management requirements, and assessing the investment outlook for Oakville Hydro's distribution system. We're increasing our insights into the anticipated accelerated electricity growth and the consumption and the related infrastructure. And all this to better understand the potential opportunities and the risks. I'd now like to invite my colleague Scott Moody to provide an update on Oakville Hydro, and he'll provide some more insight into the energy transition. Thank you. And Scott?
Thank you, Rob. Good evening, Mayor Burton, councillors, town staff. I'm honored to be here tonight representing the employees working day and night to deliver safe and reliable power to the residents of Oakville. To begin, I'd like to take you through Oakville Hydro's current distribution network. We serve over 77,000 customers, 90% are residential. In 2023, we added 1,100 new customers and made over 1,500 new connections. Oakville Hydro relies on many pieces of critical infrastructure. Electricity is delivered from the provincial grid through 5 transformation stations and is distributed through nearly 8,900 transformers, 8,800 poles, and 1,300 switches, including 372 automated switches. Oakville boasts one of the most automated systems in Canada, which provides our control center operators the flexibility to reroute power to customers through millions of different configurations and the ability to restore power during outages quickly. Ontario's energy and electricity sector is undergoing a transformation in support of a cleaner, more sustainable future. And Oakville Hydro is doing its part. We are taking several steps to optimize our grid, focusing on improving efficiency, reliability, and sustainability. Our investment plans include modernizing our metering systems with enhanced data functionality. Adding the power of advanced data analytics, Oakville Hydro can better monitor and predict usage patterns to help identify weaknesses and inefficiencies and optimize our electrical network. We are also investing heavily in cybersecurity to defend sensitive customer information and critical infrastructure data. With electricity demand anticipated to double and even triple by 2050, new sources of generation, both large and small, will be required. The Independent Electricity System Operator, or the ISO, is progressing with its market renewal procurement to expand grid contribution and is looking primarily by way of solar, wind, hydro, and nuclear power. In addition, the ISO is procuring large-scale battery energy storage to maximize the benefits of renewables sources of generation. Oakville Hydro is experiencing and benefiting from steady customer growth. There are over 30 active projects in our system, representing 3,800 potential new customers. Working with the town's growth projections, Oakville Hydro is planning for the same high levels of reliability of service for the next generation of Oakville customers. Oakville Hydro is very proud of its reliability record. Through prudent vegetation management, strategic asset renewals, investments in automation, and our state-of-the-art control room, Oakville Hydro electricity customers experienced an average of 14 minutes of total outage time. That's 7 times less compared to the average urban Ontario electricity customer. In terms of outage frequency, the average Oakville customer experienced 0.6 of an outage in 2023. That's compared to over 1.1 for the average Ontario customer. In large part, automation is the difference maker, helping us avoid over 940,000 customer outage minutes. Adding all that up, that's 650 days of combined avoided outages. Here's a recent example of the issues to which our crews routinely respond. In this case, a vehicle collided with a pad mount transformer. The collision resulted in 118 customers losing power. It took less than 1 hour for our crews to be dispatched to make the necessary repairs. And also earlier in May, a cable fault caused a widespread outage affecting 4,541 customers. Thanks to the work of our control room and leveraging our automation, power was restored to 3,840 customers within 2 minutes, and 96% of customers had all their power restored within 18 minutes. I'll close my presentation today by announcing an exciting initiative, introducing the Oakville Hydro mobile app. Customers can now download our mobile app to their iPhones or Android phones or tablets and access their account information. Customers can access billing data, consumption stats, and outage information, all in one easy-to-use application. I am also happy to inform the Council that we are currently trialing the texting of outages to affected customers. So at this time, I would like to invite my colleague, Laura Wilson, Chief Financial Officer, to review our 2023 financial performance.
Thank you, Scott. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. I am pleased to present OEC's 2023 financial highlights. OEC delivered strong performance in 2023 with $30.3 million in total comprehensive income. The chart on this slide highlights OEC's income growth over the last 5 years, an impressive 3.2 times over 2019. By growing the business, both through acquisition and organically, OEC has increased profitability and value for our shareholders. The 2021 acquisitions of QSP Geographics, DPM Energy, and Transpower Utility Contractors in Ontario, and EMB Management in British Columbia have contributed to OEC's success. Other financial highlights on this slide include payments to the town of Oakville of $13.2 million, including the annual dividend of $6.1 million, and shareholders' equity at December 31st, 2023 was $195.9 million. I'm excited to say that OEC's enterprise value increased in 2023 from $748 million to $842 million, almost a $100 million increase, driven by performance and higher level of industry activity, the recurring nature of services to utility and infrastructure owners to support their requirements of growth tied to population growth, urbanization, and utility requirements. OEC's well-established and highly trusted brands, supporting stable results and organic growth with key customers. Outcomes of operational performance initiatives in many of our businesses, including innovative solutions to leverage business challenges and opportunities, and the diversity of the OEC portfolio, which Rob highlighted on an earlier slide. OEC continues to evolve, building on many transformational achievements and a growth culture that is very focused on increasing shareholder value. OEC has a clear focus on delivering financial growth and profitability, and we are very excited about the potential for dividend growth. With strong progress against targets achieved in 2023 and expected in 2024, it is anticipated that the 2025 dividend will be in the range of $10 to $12 million. That concludes today's presentation, and we would be happy to answer any questions.
Well, I know your slide says thank you to us, but I should say on our behalf, thank you to you. The prospect of up to a doubling of our dividends puts a smile on my face. Councillor Longo and Councillor Chisholm.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you for a great presentation. Ms. Wilson, just a couple of quick questions, because excellent results, which isn't a question. But you talked about diversification. So what revenue does OEC receive from the acquisitions, or not the acquisitions, but the out-of-province, so Alberta, BC, what do they deliver to the results?
Yeah, with those areas, we're definitely expanding our geographical footprint. And in 2023, revenues were in the range of, I think it was like almost $16 million and growing from those businesses.
And then with respect to that, because the diversification's been happening over years, but since 2021, the recent acquisitions, how have they contributed to the overall kind of revenue?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, they actually contribute about a third of OEC's revenues. So in the range of approximately $210 million, but yes, approximately a third.
Okay, excellent, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Chisholm and then Councillor Knoll.
Yes, I was just mildly surprised of the, we're standing at 6 million on the province side, now 10 to 12, you're almost doubling. What has happened to double that up so quickly in 1 year? My goodness, that is an unbelievable return on the dividends in 1 year.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. A number of initiatives in 2023 and just operational performance of our business, aligning with our strategic plan targets. We've had, just as one example, in one area of our business, significant operational performance from a more stable workforce in the locating business, as an example, with record locating times, higher compliance, customer satisfaction due to lower turnover, And we continue to look for areas where we can improve profitability and go after larger margin projects.
Keep up the good work.
Thank you, Councillor Chisholm. Councillor Knoll.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have questions for Mr. Moody, if he could join us. Thank you. Two questions. First, and you were directly involved in this communication last year about a switching issue that precluded certain members of, I believe, both wards 4 and 5 from being able to connect solar power, I think it's feed-in tariff kind of facilities into the grid. Has there been any progress made on that to resolve that issue?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, and great question. Thanks for bringing it up, Councillor Knoll. So we've been in talks with Hydro One at various levels, from the CEO right down to the engineering and the technicians. We've made good progress. We are now able to connect all DERs, so distributed energy resources, under 10 kilowatts in Oakville. So prior to our starting these conversations, we couldn't connect anything. Right. And so based on Hydro One relaxing some of their short circuit capacity thresholds, and with some additional installations of equipment, we now are able to offer that across the board. We are continuing to work with Hydro One on further investments in 2027 that would allow us to connect larger projects. We do anticipate that there will be applications for larger projects as capital costs come down. The economics will tell us that it makes more sense.
On the 10 kilowatt connection that's allowed now, excuse me, would that accommodate a typical residential installation? And what are they typically in terms of their draws or their generation?
Yes, 10 kilowatts would be a large residential system.
It would be, okay.
Yes, yeah. They can range from 3 to 7, depending on the size of the roof and the size of the house, obviously.
Do you know if the residents that had concerns about this were connected with, or connected with, but if they were contacted to update them on their interests, or is that something just trickling out there now?
Yeah, any of those that have been in touch with us around connection, we've been dealing with, yes.
Oh, that's fantastic. Second question is, a few years ago, you might recall in Ward 5, there was a snowplow that took out a transformer, and as a result, Councillor Gratt and I lobbied hard and heavy to get those poles to give the transformers a fighting chance against these snowplows. There's several of them installed. Is this something you're going to continue to do? We've had a lot. I've heard a lot of appreciation from constituents that have had these installed in their transformers. It gives them peace of mind. Is this something you're going to continue to do and expand, or do you have any feedback on this program?
Yes, so it was a pilot program, as you know, and we were looking to see signals from the community about aesthetics and the feedback's been positive. So we will be continuing to look for those and identify those at-risk transformers. Typically, those are the ones that are closest to curbs. Yeah. There are many that are set back that are safe, but the ones that are closer to the curb line, we will be using those flags.
Well, that's great. Thank you for the creativity on that, and I think it's made a big difference, so we really appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Elgar?
Thank you. Through Mayor Burton, did you say you can now hook 10 kilowatt systems on a single family residential?
Yes.
Currently?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, sir. Through under 10 kilowatts.
Sorry, not 10, under 10.
Under 10. Yes.
I was going to ask you where the houses were that could actually take a 10 kilowatt.
Well, that's yeah. A 10 kilowatts a large residential system.
Large?
Yes. Well, I'm dealing with one right now. So.
Really?
Yeah. Plus 2 Tesla Powerwalls, 30 kilowatts total.
Okay. Yeah. So it's below 10 though, basically, right now.
Correct.
Thank you.
All righty. Thank you very much, Mr. Moody. Madam Clerk, do we have a registered delegation on this? Okay. All right, then, Council, Who would like to provide us with the indicated motion in the agenda? Councillor Longo, thank you. Any objection? There being none, that carries. Thank you, everybody. For 10.6, which is the Oakville Municipal Development Corporation, AGM, appointment of auditors, directors, and approval of financial statements, we have our, I believe Mr. Mark Maneri needs no introduction, but many of us have worked with him for many years in many capacities. Mr. Maneri, you're up. We look forward to your report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do appreciate the opportunity to talk to you tonight about the Oakville MDC's activities since we met last year at the annual general meeting. And there are a few things I do want to update you on in terms of the board's work this past year and what lies ahead. So if we could move to the next slide. I just wanted to take, I know that's a lot of writing, but if you know me, you know that's who I am. I'd like to just take a couple of minutes to talk to you and remind you about why you created the Oakville MDC in the first place. And the objective of the Oakville MDC is, as it says, to unlock the value of the underutilized real estate holdings to obtain optimal value. What that means is we're here to maximize the value of your surplus land assets. And what I mean by that is not just financial gain, but community benefits to the residents of Oakville as well. If we could move to the third slide. I would just like to remind you that you have a board of directors comprised of 3 community members and 2 council members, being municipal representatives, and they are very able and they are very committed to the organization. And I can tell you that I am pleased that they have all put their name forward for reappointment for the next term. They bring a great balance between the municipal objectives and the community objectives to the table in our discussions. The next slide, if I could. Okay. So having said that we are here to maximize the value of your assets, how do we do that? Well, we play the role of master developer. And what I mean by that is that we take a property from beginning to end. We're responsible for getting all of the technical work done, getting all the approvals in place, managing the infrastructure development, managing the development through its life, and making sure that the town has a continuing presence in the delivery of the development over the course of its life. Probably the most important part of what we do is create the situation whereby there is a complete distinction between what we do and what you do. And what I mean by that is there's absolutely no conflict between the town as the approving authority of any development and the Oakville MDC as the developer, okay? Which is very important because placing you in a conflict in development matters with your own land would be tribunal worthy, I think, in many instances. If we could go to the next slide. I've laid out for you. This is more of a reference document for you later. That's why there's so much printing here. If we could now move to slide 6, I want to speak to you about what the board has been up to the past year and what we plan to do in the year ahead. As you'll recall, the Oakville MDC business plan 2021-2023 established 3 priority projects: the former Public Works site, the Fire Hall, number 3 on Randall Street, and the Oakville Trafalgar Hospital lands. Beginning first with the former Public Works site, this past year has been all about moving it forward to the subdivision application stage, and I can tell you that we are at that point now, happily. The planning firm of Bousfields was retained to take a look at the 2018 master plan and to make sure that all of the policy objectives that have occurred since its approval in 2018 have been updated to reflect the current planning regime. And we have also retained IBI to undertake a complete series of technical reports, which will be submitted with the subdivision application based on the most up-to-date information that we have. So I think we're well placed to now, and you would say, I'll say it before you do, finally, move forward with the public works site. I think it's important, if I could go to the next slide, to just tell you that the board has looked at an updated master plan based on all the work that's been done, and we'll be able to make some, we believe, positive enhancements to what the council passed in 2018. We have redesigned the development blocks to allow for more connectivity and green space. We have wider separations, we have wider boulevards, we have wider sidewalks. We provide additional open space and parkland, as well as a new tree canopy bylaw that actually exceeds the town of Oakville bylaw requirements for each development block. We've also reduced the number of buildings by one, making the former Block 5, which fronts on Trafalgar Road, a parkland block now. Given, if you remember the configuration of the 2018 master plan, the difficulty in accessing that particular piece of property. With the submission of the subdivision application by the fall of 2024, I anticipate that the marketing of the former public works site will commence by year end or early in 2025, followed by a negotiation period and construction to commence sometime in 2025. Next slide talks about the former fire hall site on Navy Street in downtown Oakville. Although it is a priority project because the town does still use it for its own purposes, the redevelopment has been held in abeyance, although we have continued to do the environmental and the technical work required to get it ready so that when it is no longer needed by the town, it is market ready, which we anticipate will be the spring 2025. Moving to slide 9. The former Oakville Trafalgar Hospital site. It does have challenges you're aware of. I will say there has been increased developer interest in the site in 2023, and I'm currently dealing with several developers right now who have expressed an interest, but the the economic conditions, the interest rate challenges, construction cost increases, and just the overall cost to rehabilitate the high school building is still a major source of hesitancy on the part of the developers. But having said that, I am optimistic that at the end of the day that we will find a suitable partner. I think as the economic climate improves, I think the developers will be more willing to take a chance on this heritage building. Okay, so with the next slide, the annual business plan update for 2023 does show that costs associated with bringing these projects to market has increased. But having said that, the total profit and the residual land value forecasted for the public works site still remains virtually the same, while for the fire hall site, the total profit and residual land value has actually increased in the previous forecast. And you can see from my comment, these are very desirable properties, notwithstanding interest rates and market value increases. There will be a market for these when we go forward, and they'll be a good source of revenue for the municipality. Okay, moving to the last slide. This is the business portion that I would ask you to consider. As I know you're aware, the board does now serve for a 3-year term, and we're asking for an appointment of the directors for the 2024-2027 term. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Maneri. First off, Councillor Hazlet-Thiel, then Councillor Chisholm, and Councillor O'Meara.
Thank you, Mr. Maneri. Nice to see you again.
Nice to see you.
I have a few questions just about the fire hall to start. There's reference in the report that received that there was a study done analyzing the value of the fire hall. Where could council obtain that information?
That, Mr. Mayor, through you, that was a joint study done by the Oakville MDC and the town. The town will be reporting on that at some point in the future directly to council. Okay.
Okay. I would agree with you that they are valuable lands. They're valuable from a perspective of public, some of the best public land we have. And years ago, the community spoke up about the importance of public use of public lands. In the report that we received, it talks about a possible recommendation of 12 to 15 story condo. Does that include any public use at the base level?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it could include, that will be a decision for council and to give direction to Oakville MDC. The business plan for the Oakville MDC right now for the fire hall just shows it as a strictly residential condominium building. The report that was done, that you'll be getting the results of from your own staff, will talk about various options that might exist for that very use.
Okay, so I guess maybe I'm going to turn to the CAO. So when would we see that report, given we are talking about, the overall downtown cultural hub and as it's being developed? I'm curious to see it, and I also want to understand what efforts we've made around the galleries being a part of the fire hall once we no longer need the property for its current use.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we are looking at bringing a report forward probably in the fall. The report that we're working on right now jointly with the MDC is still in draft because there are a few other options that we wanted the consultant to explore, and it absolutely takes into consideration what would be the opportunities with the gallery and the building. So those are discussions we've had with the gallery to date. They have not yet themselves seen the report either because it's still in draft and we're still looking at some other further options. But we will need to bring something to council that understands what those options are that are there. And through that process have discussions with the gallery as well. But given the recommendation you dealt with quite some time ago now, considering the galleries in that building was absolutely what we needed to look at as staff, and we've done that jointly with the MDC.
Okay, thank you for that additional detail. And I'm taking it that study or the report will include what Conservation Halton has to say about our development on that land and how tall we could go based on its location?
Certainly, there's been discussions with Conservation Halton. I would indicate that height is not necessarily an issue that Conservation Halton would identify. They would identify the lands that are stable in which to develop on. That would be the extent of their comment.
Yeah, and this report actually, that is a separate exercise in terms of getting the site ready for market, in terms of Conservation Halton and the footprint for a building that would be permitted given the slope of bank and other issues on the property. This report only deals with assuming you fit within that footprint, what could it look like?
Okay. And is the 12 to 15 stories that's in the report, and maybe it's going to come later, to try and mirror what's surrounding it, or is that the maximum potential that you see in the building?
The 12 to 15 stories was a proposed development that was deemed to be optimal by the consultants. They looked at other options, 12, 15, 20, you could keep going. Their indication was that 15 was optimal. You could maybe go a floor or two higher. But financially, it doesn't make sense to go beyond that.
Okay, and my last question is around the old OT. So thank you for persevering, and hopefully one of the heritage developers will embrace the charm of the building. So it's a two-part question. Has there ever been an offer made on the land, even if it is potentially ridiculously low?
Yes, I think I could say yes, there has been an offer, but it was an offer that couldn't be delivered upon because it required taking property from what would otherwise be necessary for the seniors living facility. Okay, so simple answer is yes, but no.
Okay, and so then the second part of that is, in your presentation, you talk about we may have to consider other options, because we have to do something.
Yes.
And so can you just give me a little bit more insight into what you're thinking there and what might follow through?
What I've heard from developers is that a couple of developers that I've been dealing with over the course of the past year is that the footprint of the existing high school is actually too small for what they wanted to do. And even with additions, it still wouldn't be big enough. And so they would want to utilize at least a portion of the property to the east to incorporate into the old high school building redevelopment. That is something the council might want to consider, although it would impact the previous decision on a seniors living facility. The other thing I'm hearing is that the profitability of the site for the senior living facility, which is capped at a maximum of 4 stories, is a real problem for developers and would make any units in there unaffordable in many instances if the 4-story height is maintained. So those are the kind of options that I think, if I can find a heritage developer that will accept everything that's there, the council may have to turn its mind to in the future.
So you may need new direction.
May need new direction.
Thank you very much.
No problem.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Chisholm, then Councillor O'Meara, and Councillor Knoll.
Mine is a very simple request. On page 7 of your report, you're calling it former Oakville Trafalgar Hospital site. For clarity, it's Oakville Trafalgar High School site. Is that correct?
Well, it's a combination of actually the high school site and the hospital site. So perhaps there should be a,
the property came to us, Councillor, as a result of our acquisition of the hospital site. The hospital had acquired that property some time ago.
Correct.
Right. The high school is actually located on the former Oakville Hospital site, and as the mayor has indicated, the hospital acquired it several years ago.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor O'Meara.
Thank you, Mr. Maneri. Thank you for that. In spite of the housing crisis and the affordability crisis that has really bubbled up over the past couple of years, what has the MDC done, or has it changed its viewpoint, or has it adjusted its way any way to see how it can maximize the use of its lands to bring some affordable housing forward?
The simple answer is yes. In looking at the master plan, the 28 master plan that the town approved, we did look at the number of units on the site, and we are recommending an increase in the number of units. There is a standing direction from council that we acquire at least a minimum of 100, and that continues to be our objective for the public works site. There are some properties, though, like the fire hall site, just because of the limitation in terms of the maximum number of units that will be available, that may not lend themselves to affordable units. And the hospital site may also be in a similar situation, but the public works site for sure will lend itself to getting those affordable units. We're looking for a minimum of 100. And with a higher unit count, I think that's achievable.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor O'Meara. Councillor Knoll.
Thank you, Mr. Maneri. Just on the Public Works site, I'm looking at the annual report, and it's a little different than what you explained in terms of some of the timing. So the timing in the annual report talked about a public information meeting in May or June. I assume that that's been postponed, or?
Yeah, so yes, that has been, since the time of writing that, we weren't able to do it for May and June. So it's probably going to be more likely, and we don't want to do it in the summer because of vacation, it's going to be more likely the fall.
Okay. Will there be an opportunity to brief the ward councillors and I think potentially the Ward 6 councillors as well on where we stand with this application?
Absolutely. In fact, I would call it a requirement.
Okay. We look forward to hearing more about that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Chisholm.
Sorry, I forgot to mention, with respect to the high school site, it's been there for a lot of years without any movement. We do get a lot of criticism about the school, and it's unfortunately over the years it's deteriorating dramatically. What is the deadline or timeline we're going to be looking at saying, you know what, this is not going to work. We got to relook, get direction from council. What timeline are we looking at on this one?
I would say that we would probably not want to go beyond the end of 2025 because the building continues to deteriorate, and it does need some TLC, that's for sure. I want to, through the board, spend the next year trying to work with these developers that have come forward, trying to seek out other ones, and then if that doesn't bring forward a suitable development partner by 2025, I think I have to come back to council and say, you need to make a decision.
I look forward to that report with probably the last quarter of 2025. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. All right, any delegations on this item?
Pierre Sauvageau.
Welcome, Mr. Sauvageau. Council looks forward to your information.
Okay, good evening. I just wanted to thank Councillor Knoll in regards to when that report will be coming forward. So I'm looking forward to that report as well. And it's supposed to be done prior to the actual subdivision application. There's one question I wonder if clarification as to how the former Public Works site will be developed. It's mentioned that a subdivision application will be coming forward. Is that a town application? I'm not too sure. The property won't be sold to a developer, but who will be developing that property?
Is that one question or two? At first I thought you were asking is the subdivision application to the town? The answer to that is yes. Mr. Maneri, would you like to explain the development process after?
Mr. Mayor, through you, the intention is that the property will be transferred from the town to the Oakville MDC, and in fact, Council has already approved that transfer. We're going to do that at the appropriate time, which is prior to the subdivision application. The Oakville MDC will be making the subdivision application, and we will be looking for development partners to enter into a limited partnership or joint venture so that the Oakville MDC and the town as a shareholder continue to have participation in the development as it goes forward.
Thank you, Mr. Maneri.
Appreciate that. Thank you very much. In regards to the funds in order to do this development, I know it's a joint venture now, I understand, basically. But based on the financial statements of the Oakville MDC, there isn't any revenue coming to the corporation. I've heard that whatever properties have been sold in the past goes through the town of Oakville. But I'm just wondering what the amount of funds will be required for the development for this partnership, the amount that the town will have to provide, and the amount that probably a developer I'm not too sure if, appreciate.
Mr. Mayor, the intention is that the town will not be required to invest any dollars in the development. You will be providing, in the limited partnership, the property piece, which is your equity portion. But it was always the intention that 100% of the cost of developing the site would be developer funded.
Thank you very much for that information. Appreciate it. Just one last issue I wanted to bring up. It's in regards to the master plan. I know it'll be coming forward after the summer. With respect to the master plan, I don't want to jump the gun here, but will there be a substantial increase in height in the area? Pardon, not in the area. In regards to the buildings, I know it's been reduced from 9 to 8. But now, will these 8 buildings have a substantial increase in height? As a developer, which I'm not, but I've had dealings in the past because I used to work for a real estate development company. You want to increase the height in order to get most profit out of an application or a development. So has discussions been held with developers? Is someone willing to act as a partner with the town?
Mr. Mayor, through you, no, we're not in discussions with any developers. We've had unsolicited proposals, but because we don't have a subdivision application approved yet, it's premature to talk to developers about limited partnerships or joint ventures. Once a subdivision application is approved and we have a roadmap to show them, then the discussions will begin.
Mr. Maneri, before you leave this question, could you confirm that the point of the structure that you're outlining, the joint venture, is for the town to remain in control of the question of height?
Yes, that's exactly the case. This, by the Oakville MDC acting, I won't say as your agent because you'll have transferred us the property, but as the shareholder, we will be keeping our hand in it throughout the entire delivery of the development. So the town has control over the development through the entire process.
Thank you very much.
I'm very pleased to hear that. I know lands that were at this location was sold, for instance, the one on Glen Ashton, and the original amount of the stories was 4 stories, but that has now increased to 9 stories because the developer took the land and appealed to the OLT, Ontario Land Tribunal, and it got the increase up to 9 stories for their building, which was supposed to be just 4 stories. And part of the reason, I think, is in regards to, just bring your attention, was in regards to the zoning bylaw, which was issued in 2021-14. I just want to ensure that the town is fully cognizant of the fact that is very careful. I'm hoping that height will be a decision of council, and thank you very much. I appreciate all the time taken. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sauvageau. Council, Councillor Knoll.
Can I just ask a question of clarification, and then I'll give you the motion if you wish. I'll move the public and the confidential.
Please and thank you.
So the question is probably to the CAO. Can you just clarify the change in the Ashton building? I think it was from 6 to 9, was it? It wasn't 4, was it originally?
That's right. It was from 6 to 9 stories was the change.
Yeah, okay. Just wanted for clarification, just for the record to be set. And I'm happy to move both reports.
Thank you, Councillor. Is there any objection? There being no objection, your motion carries. Thank you very much. Now, we need to back up and we give our attention, well, I tell you what, instead of going back to Mr. Mann, I think maybe considering that we have our auditors with us, we might want to go to 10.3 and 10.4, which we usually, by tradition, we hear those together. 10.3 is the 2023 financial statements report, and we have a presentation by Jade Surgener, who will also introduce the auditor's for the 2023 audit findings report. And I believe you'll find the auditor's report agreeable or even happy-making. Ms. Surgener, it's to you we turn our attention now.
Mayor Burton and members of council. I'm here to speak to two items, so 10.3 and 10.4 on the agenda. And so the presentation that's in front of us will be for the auditors when we speak on 10.4. So for now, I'm just going to do a couple quick comments about the 2023 consolidated financial statements. So the item 10.3 is for the approval of the consolidated statements as well as the statements for the trust. And then I'll hand everything over to KPMG that will walk you through their audit report. And then at the end of that presentation, I'd be happy to go through any questions that you have on either of the agenda items. So in terms of the audit, the town is required to prepare annual financial statements, which must be audited by an independent third party and approved by council. These financial statements are consolidated, which means that they contain the results of the town itself. Sorry, thank you. As well as the 3 local boards, Oakville Public Library, Oakville Municipal Development Corporation, and then the town's ownership interest in Halton Digital Access Services Corporation and Oakville Enterprises Corporation. And although consolidated here, these individual entities all prepare their own financial statements that are audited and have been or will be approved by their respective boards. As a municipality, these consolidated statements are prepared in accordance with the public sector accounting standards. And this is important to highlight because this differs from the practices used for the town's budget process. To assist council and other users of the financial statements, Appendix C is prepared each year to show how the town's operating surplus, so net of transfers the council approved in April, reconciles with the results included in the financial statements. The last item that I wanted to highlight before turning things over to KPMG is that in 2023, there were 2 new accounting standards that the town was required to adopt. These are the financial instrument standard and asset retirement obligations. The auditors will discuss this in more detail in a few minutes, but I did want to say that when implementing the asset retirement obligation standard, we implemented it using a modified retrospective approach. And what this means is that we restated 2022 comparative figures to show that what the numbers would have been had this standard been in effect throughout 2022. And while doing this, we also restated how we report the building enterprise reserve as well as the bonus zoning reserve. And these 2 reserves have always been used for their intended purposes, but by restating them to show them as obligatory reserve funds, we're showing that they have external restrictions on them. And this doesn't change the balances in those funds or how they are used. It's simply reallocating where they're presented on the town's financial statements to align with the provincial guidance. So at this time, I'll pass things along to KPMG to present their audit findings report, which is item 10.4 on your agenda. And so joining us today are Carlos Alvarez, the audit partner, and Matt Ciardelli, the audit senior manager.
Thank you, Jade, and good evening, Your Worship and members of council. Matt and I will walk through the audit findings report for the fiscal year ended December 31st, 2023. My opening remarks is that in terms of how we conducted the audit, there were very few changes in the underlying auditing standards. But where the excitement lied is with the accounting standards. Further to the comments made by management, certainly ARO, the asset retirement obligation, was a significant new standard to be implemented by all municipalities across Canada. So as much as auditors and accountants can be excited, this certainly was top of the list. Where we would like to begin is just a few slides in the package on audit highlights. Essentially, as of today, being May the 27th, we are substantially complete. We do have a few procedures that are very customary at this point in time in terms of being outstanding, which I will profile on the next slide. In terms of, again, how we executed the audit, I would say there were no surprises. We didn't have to pivot or introduce any new auditing procedures as we went along. From a risk standpoint, I would say that we focused in on all those significant areas, whether it be revenue from taxation, tangible capital assets, accounts payable, all the items that we would have focused in on in the last several years. So again, we didn't have to change the approach. As auditors, we are always have a heightened level of skepticism. You know, we are engaged to scrub your financial results. From a misstatement perspective, I can report to council that there were no misstatements of any sort. So no uncorrected misstatements, as well as no corrected misstatements. The reason why I would comment on corrected misstatements is because that is a good signal for how complete was the audit package and how accurate was the audit package when it was provided to us. So the fact that you have both no uncorrected and no corrected means essentially it was a very high quality package. Moving along one slide, just a few of those items that are outstanding. Sorry, going the opposite way there. Certainly entertaining your questions here today is very important as part of the audit process. We do have one legal letter confirmation that we are awaiting. This is very customary to the audit process. We do anticipate receiving that legal confirmation either tomorrow or Wednesday, and then we can proceed to go to the next steps. We will ask your management team to sign a very important letter. It is called a management representation letter. In my opinion, this is an important letter because it outlines what are the responsibilities of your management team, as opposed to the responsibilities of us as auditors. We are here to audit your books and records, not prepare them, and that letter does a good job in terms of outlining the differences between those two. Moving along one slide, as a reminder for those of you who would have heard me last year, you know, certainly we don't audit every single piece of paper and every single transaction. We do have this concept of materiality that we use to plan and perform the audit. When we presented the audit plan to you, we had a higher materiality threshold set at 14.1 million. Once we received the draft financial statements for 2023, we did tweak that materiality and we actually lowered it slightly to a final materiality of 13.3 million. Again, as another reminder, $13.3 million is a very big number. We as auditors have a much lower tolerance for audit differences, and our tolerance level was set at approximately $650,000. So if there's one number to remember, it would be that. Any differences that would have exceeded $650,000, we would have been required to report those to you as council. I will pass it over, one more slide, please. As auditors, we are always required to respond to the risk of fraud. Fraud happens, and when we think about fraud, we categorize fraud into two buckets. Number one being the risk of management override of controls, and the second risk of fraud associated with fraudulent revenue recognition. I can confirm with council that based on all of the procedures we performed, based on all of the source documentation that we examined, based on all of our inquiries, from our standpoint, all of the transactions and everything that we examined was above board, and there was nothing that we considered to be suspicious or on the topic of fraud. So essentially, a clean report. If we can please move along a few slides, and I will pass it over to Matt to get into what I would call the meat and potatoes of the audit.
Yes, thank you very much, Carlos. So on this slide here, we'll just spend a few minutes speaking about our standard suite of procedures over tangible capital assets. And just as a reminder, that would be a long-lived asset that is capitalized for accounting purposes and amortized over time. So that would be roads, buildings, long-lived equipment, and the like. In each year, that is, of course, a material balance to the financial statements for the town. As such, we do look at the year-to-year consistency of the overall schedule of assets, ensuring the beginning point marries up to the prior year's audited endpoint. And then we do sample basis testing over material additions, both to construction in progress or to the various classes of assets themselves. We also look at disposals and the annual amortization of existing assets. So certainly something that we focus on each and every year, as they will always be material to the town's financial statements. However, on the next slide is where we'll spend a little bit more of our time speaking today. As Carlos and Jade both mentioned previously, there was a new accounting standard, PS 3280 for asset retirement obligations. So if we could go to the next slide, a little bit more detail here on the background, but at a high level, this was a very significant accounting standard change for the public sector, something that we have mentioned in our audit plan and in previous presentations, as this is something that was known to be coming for a number of years now. Essentially, what this accounting standard change required is for all public sector reporting entities to take a comprehensive dive through their entire ledger of tangible capital assets from top to bottom. So that involved working with various experts from different departments within the town, not just the finance function. And once a full list was compiled, procedures had to be performed by management to ensure that any possible future remediation costs that need to be carried out upon the retirement of an asset are scoped and estimated in current day dollars for accounting purposes. The standard then dictates that that is recognized as a liability on the financial statements. Certainly a complex estimate that involved many hours and many people's time to compile. Us as auditors ensured that the process management took to prepare that list and assess all of the assets with retirement obligations attached to them was appropriate, that it followed the requirements of the standard, and that all key assumptions, once certain retirement obligations were identified, were reasonable. Examples of retirement obligations that fell within the scope of the town's retirement obligation are buildings with asbestos that is required to be removed upon the end of that building's life. Also contaminated sites that may have ground contaminants that must be dealt with in the future, or sites that have fuel tanks which require costs to remove upon the end of their useful life. So certainly a lot of time spent on this area, and as mentioned, the methodology used to adopt this standard involved a retrospective adjustment to the prior period. So you will see disclosures in the financial statements that show the impact of those changes, and not only to the current year, but to 2022's comparatives. On a go-forward basis, the standard will require management to revisit it at each year end to account for any new obligations that should be considered, as well as to amortize or reduce the liability as existing obligations are settled. Moving on to the next slide, I will pass it back to Carlos to discuss one other matter identified in the audit related to the OEC.
Thanks, Matt. So with respect to the OEC, they had a transaction at the end of 2023 in which they essentially converted a portion of the common shares that they owned into a note payable. And because you as the town own 100% of OEC, we had to obtain management's analysis in terms of, was there a change in the percentage owned by the town in OEC? So in 2022, your percentage ownership was 90%. Because of this transaction, we raised the question, well, is that 90% now 95%? So we did obtain management's analysis. We took a sideways glance. We essentially concurred with your management team that that transaction that took place at the OEC level did not substantively change the ownership percentages. So at the end of 2023, your percentage ownership, or the percentage controlled, remained at 90%. So that would be one thing that would be new for 2023 in terms of something that we would consider to be a unique transaction. So Matt, over to you for the next slide. Oh, I think we've already spoken to misstatements. Yeah, we've already spoken to misstatements. So
yes, we can go ahead a couple, please.
Yeah.
We've already spoken to the fact that there are no corrected nor uncorrected misstatements. So if we could go 2 slides ahead, please. Control deficiencies. This was on the highlights page, and similar to Carlos's comments regarding misstatements, though we do try and identify anything we can, we're of course required to look at not only transactions, but the control processes that surround the accounting transactions themselves. We do have to obtain an understanding of the key control processes over financial reporting, and nothing came to our attention during the audit that would rise to the level of a control deficiency, certainly not a significant deficiency. So a positive result to report, given that we have nothing to bring to your attention in this matter. Moving on, one more slide, please. We'll also talk about one other item that Jade had previously mentioned, and that was an accounting policy change regarding building reserves, particularly those regarding zoning. As management's explanation, both written and orally earlier in the presentation said, this was effectively an accounting geography change. The reserve was previously treated as internally restricted and resided within accumulated surplus on the financial statements. With this policy change, the reserve is now being treated as an externally restricted obligatory reserve, given that it is within the scope of existing legislation. What this means is it is now recognized as a liability on the financial statements. So you will see disclosures in the financial statement notes, specifically note 2, which, similar to the impact of the ARO standard, outline the changes to the current and comparative figures that came as a result of this policy change. Again, echoing management's comments that this effectively aligns with the way that the ministry requires these to be reported and increases administrative efficiency in that regard. But there's no fundamental or underlying change to the reserves themselves from a non-accounting point of view. Now with that, I'll pass it back to Carlos to go over our next topic, which is independence.
Independence is always an important topic for your auditors to bring up as an item to discuss. I can confirm with council that we remained independent throughout the entire fiscal year and all the way up until today. So we as auditors need to be independent throughout the entire audit process. What that means is that, there are certain lines in the sand that we can't cross. Again, we cannot prepare working papers. We also cannot be involved in implementing a financial system, as an example, or providing other services in which we would be put into a position where we could be auditing our own work. So again, none of those items took place, so I can confirm that we remained independent. Moving further along in the report, there are several appendices that are included in the package. My plan was not to go through each and every one in any detail. I will like to mention that what you don't see is text and information on cybersecurity. In previous years, we would have included a lot of content on cybersecurity. This does not suggest that cybersecurity is not important, in that you don't see it profiled here. Again, we have profiled it in previous fiscal years. I'm sure we all are fully aware of examples that exist in which cybersecurity breaches have taken place. Welcome the opportunity to share our insights at a later date. Again, based on your wishes. And the only other thing that I would like to comment on is artificial intelligence. Many municipalities are coming to us, asking fundamental questions. What does it mean for a municipality? What are the risks, but more importantly, what are the opportunities? So again, it's a hot topic. Welcome any discussions at a later point in time. So from my standpoint, as an auditor, I think I've covered what I would call the mandatory topics as part of our audit findings report. And so with that, I will pause and back to you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Mr. Alvarez. Councillor Lischina has a question or two. Councillor Lischina.
Thank you very much for the presentation. I guess it was slide 4, and then you did mention another slide about internal controls. And I was hoping you could just define significant, and then when you said it didn't reach the level, what does that mean in order for it to actually be an issue?
Through you, Your Worship, 2 comments. Number 1, if we come up with a misstatement, that would automatically cause us to do a root cause analysis. There are many situations on other municipalities where we do come up with misstatements. For those misstatements that approach materiality, I would say that you do have a significant deficiency because something happened in the control framework that broke down, that let that difference go through all the way to the auditors. Our role should almost be invisible. So the gold standard is that there are 0 misstatements. So that would be one example. There are other times where we may see something with the documentation provided with management, such as an unreconciled difference that might not approach materiality, but it would be above our posting threshold, and management did not have a sufficient or appropriate explanation. That would be an example of a deficiency that I wouldn't categorize as significant, but as a other observation.
So, for example, if in the RFP process for all the different procurement that happens, is that there's controls there too? Is that something that you audit or you don't?
Not specifically, no.
Okay, thank you. And then my second question, if that's okay, is regarding the accounting standards. So the PSAS 3280, you mentioned about end-of-life buildings. So what you're, just to understand, so we can't demolish a town building unless we remove the asbestos?
For you, Your Worship, yes, there will be certain requirements on how to handle, I call it hazardous materials. And so where there is a legislative requirement to handle a material in a certain way, you need to account for those costs today, not in the future.
So maybe for staff, is town hall got asbestos? Since it's one of the major buildings. Thank you.
I would
And
suggest
if I may, Councillor, just when we went through the exercise of going through the buildings and going through management's analysis, I think the 3 properties that had the higher amounts of that ARO liability, I believe, was a a fire hall, a high school, and a hospital site. So those would be the three largest properties.
Thank you, Councillor Lischina. Madam Clerk, are there registered delegations for this item? If so, would you call them?
Yes, Pierre, you're registered for these.
Mr. Sauvageau, welcome back. We look forward to your information.
Is it on? Yes, it is. Thank you. Oops, please document here. I just want to bring up the significant risk and results presentation. This may or may not have been highlighted, but it states we have substantially tested material accrued liabilities subject to estimation reperforming. Material accrued liabilities, so therefore 1.3 million it is, or then you're looking at 600,000 if it's significant and reported to you. So therefore, not everything, although it's substantive, not everything will be looked at. I just want to bring that to your attention. Please correct me if I'm wrong, external auditors. But one issue was mentioning was about artificial intelligence, and it'll be brought up in a later discussion with councillors and the mayor. It's a very hot topic, and it's something that can be used by the external auditors in the near future, if not already, by some public accounting firms. But also the opportunity exists for the town to use artificial intelligence in regard to, like, for instance, the RFP process that can be done through artificial intelligence, and it's an opportunity, I think, in order to ensure that there are more controls exist. I know you're looking at me saying that it's a little bit off topic, but I think it's appropriate to mention about artificial intelligence. Thank you.
Thank you for your contribution. Mr. Alvarez, did you want to say anything about the question of how deeply you look and what gets ignored and so on?
Yes, through you, Your Worship, absolutely, we do use sampling to select samples based on certain criteria. It could be size, for example. So we don't necessarily test, 100% of the population of accounts payable or of accrued liabilities. So we do use sampling to help us guide which items we do select. And on the second question of artificial intelligence, yes, that will impact how accounting firms audit entities. There is one very exciting Canadian tool called MindBridge, which will be used globally on every single audit that KPMG conducts. So this will be one thing that's rolled out. Essentially, it'll score all of your transactions on a 9-point scale. And based on how each transaction fares against these 9 criteria, it'll actually tell auditors, here's the entire population, but here's a subset of transactions that for whatever reason are deemed to be high risk. So more to come on that topic, but that would be for future years.
And just on that first point, if you could double back to that, I don't want to leave a suggestion. Well, I want to be clear. When you do that sampling, is there a suggestion here that if the sample is smaller than 13 million or 650,000, you don't look at it? Could you just clarify, how thorough, how small an item do you look at? Because there was a suggestion. I fear that under these larger numbers, nothing gets looked at.
Yes, Your Worship. When we examine a population, we ensure that we test a sufficient amount of items so that we can confidently conclude on the entire population. And we don't stop testing samples until we get to that point. And if, during the course of our sampling, we detect even one error, then we have to extrapolate and test a whole bunch of new sampled items Again, to raise the bar to that threshold where we can positively conclude on the entire population. And our scope is not that materiality threshold that I outlined earlier.
Good, because that materiality threshold is possibly one of the least understood aspects of public accounting and auditing. So I'm very glad that you spent some extra time on that. Council, if there are no other questions, would someone like to provide the indicated motion? Councillor Lischina, any objection? There being none, that carries. Thank you, Councillor Lischina. And for clarity, that's 10.3 and 10.4. Now, Council, if it's not too late, I think we should give our attention to the very patient Sraj Maan, our Manager of Strategy, Policy, and Communications. And he's here with Alicia Lau, our Corporate Strategy Program Advisor. We're going to talk about gas-powered equipment, a hot topic.
Thank you. Good evening, Your Worship and members of Council. We are here today to follow up on previous requests to report back on the feasibility of banning small gas-powered equipment, such as leaf blowers, lawnmowers, and trimmers. This stems from agenda items at the Council meeting in July and from Planning and Development in December. To walk us through this matter, I'm pleased to introduce to Council one of our newer members on the Climate Action Team, Alicia Lau. For a bit of her background, Alicia joined us with her degree in environmental management from the University of Toronto and over 15 years of municipal public sector experience in energy management, asset management, funding and financing for climate change initiatives at the Office of Climate Change and Energy Management at Peel Region. At Peel, she led the implementation of the energy efficiency program across 70 buildings and secured over $10 million in grants and loans to support climate change. So we're pleased to have Alicia review this matter and present the findings from her report to Council. Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of Council. I'm here to present the report detailing an approach to phase out small gas-powered equipment and to provide a recommendation for Council's consideration. Next slide, please. The town has received concerns from residents that the use of small gas-powered equipment has negative impacts related to noise, climate, health, and air quality. Our approach to review this matter included jurisdictional review, public consultation with the community, resident associations, landscaper and contracting companies, and internal programs and services. A petition was also received from Quiet Oakville with 450 plus signatures calling for a ban on gas-powered equipment. In April, Climate Action staff launched an educational and awareness campaign promoting the use of and benefits of electrical outdoor equipment. After completing a thorough review, staff have developed a recommendation for Council's consideration. Next slide, please. With respect to noise, staff were asked to review this matter from an environmental perspective of noise as a contaminant or noise pollution. Noise from yard equipment can interfere with animal communication and impact where some species live. Minimizing noise in the natural environment would alleviate the stress placed on animals and species. By regulating the use of small gas-powered equipment, rather than banning it outright, noise bylaws can address concerns about noise while still allowing their functional benefit. This approach has the net benefit of establishing reasonable limits and minimize the disturbance to others. Electrical equipment can reduce noise by approximately 20%. It is important to note, though, that with this reduction, it doesn't eliminate it completely from the environment. From the survey conducted in February, 61% of respondents indicated that noise was the main concern with gas-powered equipment, followed by health, air quality, and climate change. When asked if residents would support a phase-out of gas-powered equipment, 48% of respondents indicated that it would support the town in phasing it out, while 40% of respondents did not support the phase-out, leaving 10% of respondents undecided. The survey results do not provide a clear path to a decision that would lead to a ban of this equipment. Next slide, please. While the public survey revealed that climate was not the main concern with this equipment, small gas-powered equipment do contribute to the overall emissions in the town, but accounts for a small portion of the corporate inventory. Other jurisdictions who are keeping inventory for this equipment estimate it's approximately 1% of their corporate greenhouse gas emissions. Parks and Open Space spends approximately $30,000 a year to replace gas-powered equipment that is nearing end of life with an electric option. Bless you. For example, since 2020, 35 of backpack blowers have been replaced with an electrical alternative. Statistic Canada trends indicate that the move to electrical equipment is happening and has been trending upwards since 2012. Staff recommend that efforts be placed on continued education and promotion of electrical equipment over gas alternatives. With consumers voluntarily moving towards electric equipment, the phase out of gas-powered equipment is already happening. Next slide, please. From a health and air quality perspective, we know that leaf blowers operating at high speeds do blow particulate matter into the air, which can impact human health and degrade air quality. A study conducted from the Environmental Protection Agency found that both gas-powered and electrical equipment generate similar particulate matter into the air. Halton Region would have the responsibility of reviewing the impact that gas-powered equipment has on the health of residents and the impact to air quality if it continues to be a concern to residents. Halton Region also confirmed that a review of this matter has not been completed, as complaints about the use of this equipment are typically related to noise. Next slide, please. After reviewing this matter related to noise, climate, health, and air quality, staff have determined there is currently an insufficient basis to ban small gas-powered equipment for reasons including a ban would be challenging to enforce and may require additional staff and financial resources. Retiring usable gas-powered equipment has its own environmental impact since equipment is only partially recycled. The town has approximately $1 million worth of gas-powered equipment that would need to be replaced and would require $2 million to replace it with an electric alternative. Facility and electrical panel upgrades would be needed. The cost of doing this work is currently unknown. And there would be immediate impacts to service levels to maintain outdoor and open spaces due to limitations related to battery charging and access to infrastructure. Next slide, please. Staff looked at other jurisdictions to understand what approaches are being taken. A number of boroughs in Montreal have either enacted or a bylaw or are considering one for gas leaf blowers. In January 2022, the City of Vancouver passed a motion to phase out gas-powered equipment for personal and commercial use by 2024. However, the Parks Board in Vancouver has only transitioned 35% of its equipment to electric and is experiencing limitations with battery life and charging infrastructure. Staff has since advised their council that the market is not ready to move to a complete ban of this equipment. A municipality in Oak Bay, British Columbia, voted to ban all gas-powered equipment. In Halifax, staff informed council that a ban on gas-powered equipment was not recommended for reasons of it not being enforceable, impact to municipal service levels, and increased financial costs for the municipality and residents. The city is currently focused on greening its own equipment. The City of Mississauga is currently running a pilot project involving a complete operational crew with battery-operated equipment as a test to see if full transition to electric is feasible. And lastly, in July 2023, the City of Toronto Council supported the exploration of a ban on the use of two-stroke equipment. The city's 2024 budget did not include funding for this work, resulting that staff are now shifting away from policy and are taking an outreach and an engagement approach. Next slide, please. To support a phase out of this approach to this equipment, staff have launched an annual campaign to keep electric tools top of mind for residents and landscapers who are looking to buy and purchase new equipment. The key messaging is on the town's website, advertised at public town facilities, amplified on social media platforms, and inserts have been mailed out with a tax bill earlier this month. Messaging has also been shared with the residents' associations and has been shared with the in-store retailers for those who are willing to promote it. After reviewing feedback from the public, staff will continue to educate the community on the benefits of shifting to electric equipment, providing residents and small businesses the time to make the shift, as the market readiness is not there to support a full transition to electric yard maintenance tools. This approach will also take the financial burden off residents and small businesses to make the switch immediately. The town has also expressed an interest in working with the Clean Air Partnership and other interested municipalities who will be conducting a study on the impact of gas-powered equipment and its impact on environment and human health. The study will provide municipalities with a plan and recommendations to support the community to transition to low-emission equipment and on how to enact a ban if it becomes necessary. The study is expected to be completed by March 2025 and should funding from the Federations of Canadian Municipalities be approved to support this work. Lastly, to successfully regulate gas equipment, the town would need the support and involvement of the federal and provincial governments who have roles to play in the sale and distribution of this equipment. In the intergovernmental request report, staff will be recommending that a review and consideration of a ban on gas-powered equipment be added to the list of intergovernmental priorities. Next slide, please. Understanding that enforcing a ban of this equipment will be difficult and will be financially impactful to the community and small businesses, as well as the town's operations and service levels, staff recommend that the town continue a phased-out approach to reduce the use of small gas-powered equipment by aligning to market conditions, shifting to electric tools, and continue to supplement this transition with an education and communications plan. The town will continue to take a leadership role in phasing out its own equipment with electrical alternatives as they become available. Staff will continue to ensure decisions requiring the purchase of new equipment align to the town's sustainable green fleet procedure, which encourages replacing fleet vehicles and equipment with fuel-efficient, low-emission, and electric alternatives, and the sustainable purchasing procedure, which prioritizes minimizing toxicity to protect health, air, and water quality. Thank you. Staff are now available to take any questions.
Thank you very much, and I congratulate you on your premier appearance before council, and it's a pleasure to meet you and to work with you. You have generated a few questions. We're going to start with Councillor Adams, Councillor Chisholm, and Councillor Dudek, and once they've warmed you up, we'll see what else happens.
Thank you very much for the presentation and the materials. I just had a clarification question for you. On page 138 of our agenda, under the climate change section of your report, it refers to emissions research that has shown that commercial leaf blowers, after 1 hour of use, generate pollution comparable with that of a 1,760 kilometer drive in a car. When I went to the link for emissions research, it just cites the same number without actually showing any research. And I wonder whether that number is referring to CO2 emissions or other kinds of pollution emissions. And so I wonder if you could check on that, or if you happen to know, tell us. But if it's not relating to CO2 and it's relating to particulate matter or something else, can we clarify that? Because I think it's going to create misinformation in the community when we get approached by members of the public advocating for a ban on leaf blowers and saying, oh my gosh, a leaf blower is worse than a car. It might be worse than a car with respect to particulate matter or something like that, but I find it hard to believe that a leaf blower generates that much CO2. It would require burning an awful lot of fuel. So I wonder if you can check that, please.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, yeah, we can absolutely check on that. Generally, those numbers are provided in equivalent carbon dioxide equivalent numbers, so we can go back and look at it. Leaf blowers generally spew off all sorts of different types, carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, volatile organic compounds. So we'll double check how that number was built, but it's usually an equivalent CO2 number that they make reference to.
Okay, I look forward to that clarification. Sure, yeah. Because I wondered about how it was calculated.
Mm-hmm.
Next up, Councillor Chisholm.
Thank you, Worship. As the time comes, I would like to move this report. The only comment I have is on the noise, and I'm going to revert back to the municipal bylaws on what we've just approved. The challenge we have, it's the gas, the two-stroke is one thing, but we have services that come out on properties with 2 and 3 and 4 of these going at the same time. This is a real challenge. Is there? I guess I should have asked that question to the municipal bylaw on how we can deal with that with respect to how they deal on properties. Can we zero it down to 1 or 2? But the 3 and 4 and the decibel readings are probably right off the map. But it's also it's above the noise issue that we have right now. So can we have consideration to talk to bylaw on that one with respect to the number of leaf blowers going on properties at one time? Can we have some way of, I don't like the word mandate, but one per acre or whatever? There must be some kind of a challenge with that. And I see Celine is there, I think. She might have.
Councillor, the bylaw people, it's basically out of order at this point in the agenda. The bylaw people have presented to us and have taken away for study an approach that looks at the total noise rather than so if the total noise meets the criteria, what do you care how many there are, as long as the total noise factor passes, would be the question.
Yes, you're right, your worship, but we don't know that. That's an unknown. If it reaches the decibel, I can't remember the decibel, 50, 45 or 50. But when you add more than 1, 2, and you're up to 4, does it change the noise level with respect to on the property?
Councillor, I'm sure that staff are willing to take that as a direction to include in their work before they bring us back the item in October. How's that?
That's fine.
They've agreed with the thumbs up, so there you go.
Okay.
Back to Ms. Lau. Do you have anything else for her?
No, I'd be happy to move it when the time comes.
You are on the order paper for the mover, but we have some councillors to hear from before we do that vote. So, but you've moved it and it's recognized. Councillor Dunnock.
Thank you, Your Worship. I wonder if you can clarify the term phased out, because to me that implies that there's going to be a target in terms of doing away with them. Can you give me an idea? Are you targeting a date, hopefully, that you're going to see a phasing out of these gas-powered leaf blowers or tools, whatever you want to use the terminology?
Yeah, thank you for the question. Through you, Mr. Mayor, there was some staff thought on applying a date, although we didn't want to apply a date to perceive that this was coming forth as a ban. Since with the intel that we were getting from the public consultation through the open house, through the survey, I've spent a lot of time with the residents associations, having one-on-one kind of time with them, talking with them. And so positions have softened in that they do understand the practicality of a ban wouldn't really work well in certain. So we had some time to untangle what that could look like. And I do think that we don't have, I wouldn't want to say we have consolidated agreement that we don't need to ban this, but I do think that with market conditions, with my interactions with the retailers, my interactions with the residents associations, that there is a gradual migration to electrical equipment happening. And I think the focus for the town and with this recommendation is that we continue to focus on exactly that education piece, that promotion, working with the retailers. I've spent a lot of time in store at these hardware stores who are very keen on promoting this. And I think with that that collaborative effort, we can really do scale this transition as quickly as we can, probably in the next couple of years. But a lot of the other, in our jurisdictional scan, just to your comment on us applying a date, most of the, I guess, municipalities that are looking at this have applied a date with an intention to ban, which is why we chose not to do that.
Okay. And have we reached out to our provincial or federal members in regard to government, rather, in regards to providing a financial incentive to switch over to the electric? In other words, and I can see from the standpoint of, say, a large landscaping firm, it would be extremely costly. But just for the average person, if they knew there was an incentive for them to get a better price, that might encourage them. Have we had any dialogue that way?
Yeah, no, thank you for the question. Through you, Mr. Mayor, we haven't landed quite on how to incentivize it, although we do think that would be a very a great solution for people looking to switch the equipment. we have thought and looked, we are going to include this as a priority on our intergovernmental report and list it as a priority. And with that, we hope that through those conversations and giving it kind of at that, putting it on the radar, if you will, we'll have the ability to have those conversations about what could be possible, as we do know that throughout Canada and even locally here in Ontario, we're seeing a lot of the municipalities kind of pivoting and trying to understand what the right way is here. So I do think that could be a possible solution.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Councillor Dudek. Councillor Haslett-Deal.
Thank you, Mayor Burton. Welcome aboard, and thank you for the great report. My comments are really around the quality of the information that's in the public realm. It is one of the better social media posts, etc. People's eyes are stopping and looking and reading it. So well done. And I mean, it really is, more people have stopped me and commented about that when they're at the community center than some of the programs that go up on the board. So thank you for that effort, and keep up the great work.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Chisholm's motion is before you, Council. Is there any objection? There being none, Councillor Chisholm, congratulations, your motion carries. Council 10.7, the Priority Intergovernmental Request Report is in front of you. I wonder if Councillor McNeice, who has his hand up, maybe I anticipate you or you anticipate me, but I'll just recognize you and see if you do what I thought you're going to do, or what I was going to suggest you do.
Through your worship, add fireworks to the provincial list?
Bingo.
Okay, yeah, we're in agreement. Thank you.
All right, so the indicated motion would be that the 2024 priority intergovernmental requests identified in Appendix A from the Strategy, Policy, and Communications Department be approved with the addition of a request of the higher levels of government to ban the sale of fireworks. I think that's all you wanted. I'm tempted to say the importation and sale.
I guess to your worship, I believe other municipalities are trying to join forces through, AMO, FCM. So I think if we could benefit from working in collaboration with our partners to see what's possible. So.
Right, I was thinking the province could ban the sale and the federals could ban the importation. Cut them off at the source, so to speak. So you're moving that?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. A couple hands up, I believe.
Well, I'm just getting a motion on the table. And now we turn to the hands. Councillor Chisholm's got the fastest hand, then Councillor Giddings.
Thank you. Since we've approved the noise bylaw, recommendation 2, can we move that into the 24 priority intergovernmental requests? Because that's where it's very specific. Can we add that in too? Because that's one we're looking to move to the government. Are we okay with that?
Through you, Your Worship, it is in the list in the appendix.
Oh, it's not in the report. Okay. All right, that's fine. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Giddings.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, I just had a question regarding the changed requests. Midtown Oakville to remove the request related to the reconstruction of the Trafalgar Road interchange. Is that remove or delay, or just curious, a little more detail on that one?
Detail is coming in the person of Commissioner Fu.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the Trafalgar interchange through the Midtown Transportation Study is being reconfigured. So we removed it from the request to the advocacy piece, but it's certainly there will be a network that will facilitate that intersection.
Would that include the Royal Windsor full exchange? I'm just trying to picture, because there was always that twinning of Trafalgar, if you'll call it that. So is it, we'll see what happens through the transportation study that's coming, or is it off forever?
The transportation study forthcoming will show a different configuration for Trafalgar, but it will still remain to have the Royal Windsor on it.
All right, so Town Hall is safe, I take it now then?
Oh, through you, Mr. Mayor. Town Hall is not safe. The north-south road that is actually cutting through, that's not the Trafalgar interchange, but the north-south road that's cutting through Midtown that provides a key collector paralleling to Trafalgar is still coming through. So not the interchange that you're questioning earlier, but the road that's further east of Trafalgar is still cutting through Town Hall.
I'm somewhat relieved. Thank you.
No problem.
Thank you. Councillor Hazlett-Thiel.
Thank you. Just in terms of advocacy, in the new Midtown report that's come out, they're saying Royal Windsor interchange upgrades are a 2051 target. So I see it on here as our advocating in our original plan. Are we advocating for 2051 or are we advocating sooner?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we're always advocating sooner. I think it's important for us to be always in front of our provincial or other partners to advocate for infrastructure. The sooner we could get infrastructure funding to Oakville, we will certainly move up our target in terms of our planning horizon.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that.
All righty. We have received a motion from Councillor McNeice adding the issues of banning the importation and sale of fireworks. Is there any objection to the motion? Madam Clerk, there being no objection, that carries. Congratulations, Councillor McNeice. Council, you have a confidential report from legal, and on the off chance that you're satisfied with that report, I wonder if someone would give me the indicated motion from the report. Councillor Longo, is there any objection? There being no objection, that's carried, and I can report that the motion was to receive the legal update report and authorize staff to settle the litigation. What? Oh, sorry. I misunderstood. Well, anyway, something has been passed. Sorry about that. I believe it's time for a motion to rise and report to council. Councillor Elgar, thank you very much. I believe that the intention of the mover was to include that. And he has just confirmed that. So is there any objection to Councillor Elgar's motion to rise and report? There being none, that's carried. I rise and report the Committee of the Whole met and made recommendations on consent items 8.1 through 8.5, discussion items 10.1 to 10.7, and confidential discussion items 11.1 to 11.3 as noted by the clerk. May I have a mover and seconder to adopt the report? Councillor Adams and Councillor Grant, thank you. Any objection? There being none, the report is adopted. Council, I need to ask if anybody has any new business of a congratulatory or condolence nature, and I see hands. Councillor Nanda and then Councillor Adams.
Thank you, through you, Mayor Burton. This Saturday, there will be an Asian Heritage Festival, the very first heritage festival through the Asian Heritage Society. And we would like to invite all of council and staff and all the residents of Oakville to come out to Fowley Park from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. to enjoy lots of food, event, cultural performances, and just a great day outside with your family. So we would love to have everyone come out and join the festivities. Thank you.
Thank you. I love parties. Can't wait. Councillor Adams.
Speaking of parties, Councillor Listrina and I want to congratulate the Northeast Oakville Fair for the 5th Northeast Oakville Fair that they held just yesterday. And the committee did a fantastic job. I want to congratulate the chair of the fair, Jennifer Brickus, who not only was the chair of the fair, but she and Century 21 Miller Brokerage
were platinum sponsors, along with SmileWorks and Dentistry by Dr. Chuan Chuan and Associates. They together and a whole bunch of other gold sponsors and silver sponsors made it happen. And we managed to give out 2,200 waffles, and Councillor Knoll and Film.ca gave out 1,100 bags of popcorn. Thank you for all the popcorn. And our chair of the fair estimates that there were some 4,000 visitors that joined us over the course of the day. And so we had a fantastic fair, a lot of fun, a lot of happy smiles. And so we want to thank a few members of our staff who helped make it happen. And number one on the hit parade was Anna Rookyard, our special events coordinator. A ginormous thank you to her and all the team that helped her. I have a little special call out for Emily Strobel, the coordinator in the licensing and enforcement team, who they probably never get thanked, but they managed to get one of our vendors through the licensing process on Friday at 4:15, just in time for the fair. And so a giant thank you to making that happen. Chris Mark, who was with us here, he and his team made the fairgrounds look fantastic for the day, and so a giant thank you to their team. I know every member of this council thinks super highly of Chris and his team, but they really went above and beyond to make the day a great success. So once again, congrats to the fair committee for another very, very successful day. Councillor Lischina, I'm pretty sure you're the one that may have called the Weather Network to give us the window of opportunity to have just the best weather possible. And so to all of you who joined us, thank you. We appreciate your support.
Thank you, Councillor Adams. And I have to thank the fair for giving me an opportunity to sample a Venezuelan delicacy, an arepa rombera, which I highly recommend. I also, in the same spirit of congratulations, happy 167th birthday, Oakville. So I believe we have a request for report from Councillor McNeice and Councillor O'Meara. And I believe the clerks have circulated it to you. It's moved by Councillor McNeice and Councillor O'Meara. Does anybody object? Then that's approved. Congratulations, guys. So now we need a mover and seconder for consideration and reading of the bylaws as listed in the agenda, except for 2024-79, which we did not pass. Councillor Longo and Councillor Knoll, thank you. Any objection? There being none, the bylaws are considered read and passed. And that ends the work of the meeting. Thank you, everybody, for all your contributions. It's terrific working with you, and we're done.